Y'all dealing with the king. If you wanna come and get it, let the outlaw get you out your seats. You want sports talk, politics? He don't give a shit. Everyone says speak, follow it. About to issue y'all a masterclass. You wanna pass? Gunslinging the new podcast, the candy ass. Gravitas bench, get information. It's your boy John Roker. Welcome to the Outlaw Nation.
All right, welcome everybody to the latest episode of the Outlaw Nation podcast. It is John Roca, a.k.a. The Outlaw, welcoming you back to his show. Hey, thanks to everybody who's been listening for the last 8 episodes, leaving me some awesome comments, leaving me some great messages on Facebook and on Twitter. Got a lot of DMs from you all. Fantastic stuff. And I really appreciate all of you that went to meundies.com/outlaw to support the podcast. Like, you didn't have to buy anything. Just clicking on it was enough to get people to show MeUndies that I'm a viable person for them to sponsor, a viable podcast for them to sponsor. So thanks so much to everybody who did that. And if you haven't done it, I don't think it's down yet. So if you haven't done it yet, just take a quick second and go to meundies.com/outlaw and click on it. And you really help the podcast show some kind of support. And then they'll see how many clicks they get. And if they get a lot of clicks, then I might get some financial backing for the podcast, which would be great. So, guys, it's been a crazy week. A lot of stuff going on, a lot of craziness. I've been doing a lot of stuff at Collider more and more, so it's been really nice to do that kind of stuff. We went to Spider-Man Homecoming last night. The screening, I can't talk about it too much, other than to say that I left the theater with a big smile on my face. That's what I could say about that. I've been watching a lot of shows. Got to see the end of Veep, end of Silicon Valley. Really enjoyed the end of Veep. That's a fantastic show. If you haven't started watching it, I don't know what to tell you, but get on it. Silicon Valley, yeah, it was a decent season. You know, there were, in the beginning, I was like, and then it got good in the middle, and then it kind of filtered out in the end. And, I posted about this on Facebook, and I think I put it on Twitter as well, but it feels like Entourage for tech nerds now. So I'm not as, invested in the show as I had been before. So, but Fargo ended, and Fargo was fantastic. What an awesome season finale, and I loved the third season. I know some people felt it was a bit uneven. I did not. I was so engrossed in it, and I can't compare the seasons, to be honest with you, because all of them are just so exquisitely themselves, each separate season. So, and it's a completely different story. So it's difficult to compare because you're not using the same characters, same actors, nothing. So, for the most part. So to me, I think each one stands on its own, and it was really a nice time. A really great series, rather. So, I also, what else? It's been crazy with the NBA, but I wanted to wait. Like, I was initially going to bring Matt Nost on. We were going to talk about the trades and the free agent signings and Phil Jackson stepping down and Chris Paul going to the Rockets. But I decided for us to wait until Paul George. When the Paul George situation handles itself, then, and Gordon Hayward and Griffin, when all that dust settles, then I'll have Matt Nost on, and we'll talk about it as a post-mortem of the NBA free agency, and then to kind of go through what we think is going to happen in the season, what's going to happen to the teams and to the players, and if they fit, and what the challenges are going to be, and what the benefits are going to be of all that. So, for those of you who were thinking I might have Matt Nost on this week, I am not. I'm going to wait a little bit. It's probably best to get a whole thing rather than just little snippets. What else? Oh yeah, I went on the matchmaker date the other night. Interesting experience. Really cool girl, a really cool woman rather. Awesome. Just, I don't know what to say. Great personality, really fun. She's a lawyer. She's an IP lawyer. She's really funny, very like intelligent, and studied cultures, and she studied archaeology, and so it was a great conversation. She just wasn't 100% what I was looking for, but I will say the matchmaker definitely understands the personality I want. So that was great. But I just didn't think we were like vibing chemistry-wise, but we were definitely vibing friend-wise. Absolutely. She's a massive USC fan, and we talked about college football for about half an hour on a date, and she was like, she's an intense watcher of college football, which to me is massive points in my book because I love college football so much. So it was a good time. So we'll see what happens. There's a couple other people I'm talking to, so just kind of putting myself back out there slowly but surely. Kind of getting it going there. What else? There's some projects that are coming down the pike. There's some announcements that are coming, some new shows that I'll be on. So all of that is just kind of like germinating. Is that the right word? As opposed to festering, so germinating, kind of figuring it out and seeing. And I'll be making some announcements soon on my social media. And if you don't follow me there at The Rocha Says, ROCHA, on Twitter and on Instagram, and you'll see the stuff I'm doing. So, all right, I think that's enough for intro from me. I want to let you guys know this is a massive episode. I was able to get to sit down with Rachel the Crusher Cushing and William Viviani, two of the up-and-coming stars of the Schmodown, and also two incredibly intelligent writers. And I just got to sit down and talk with Rachel about Game of Thrones, about Glow, and about her career as a writer. And then also with Viviani, we got to talk about film analysis and film criticism, and also our thoughts on Transformers, and then our thoughts on like films in general. And some things came up, and we had a good time talking about it. So I think you guys are going to enjoy this podcast. I'm going to just jump into it, and then I'll do little breaks, and then boom, I'll end the show. So all right, get ready. Here we go. Rachel the Crusher Cushing is up first. She's awesome, so I think you guys are going to enjoy this interview, and it's coming up right after this break.
There are good days, there are bad days, and you need that sort of support system. And that's the thing I love the most about it, is that the whole Collider crew and all the people that they brought in, their competitors, everybody, they're my people. Right. You guys are more on camera people, but it's still based in our love of movies.
Yeah.
And that's been the greatest gift of the whole thing for me.
That's awesome. When you started writing, did you like go on a website? Like how did you get noticed, I guess I would say? Did you start your own writing on your own website and then like submit your stuff, or how did that work out?
I actually did, and mostly it all happened thanks to Scott Mantz.
Oh.
So
how ironic.
Yeah, so
my greatest rival.
Sorry.
No.
So he did. When Christian and the gang were at Popcorn Talk, that's when they started expanding into different kinds of shows.
Right.
And Alicia Malone and Scott Mantz did Profiles with Malone and Mantz. And Sorry to the Main Show, that became my favorite show because they were covering some of my absolute favorites. Right. And they had a Facebook page, and I'd met Scott maybe once through Christian at a party or something like that. And I just... Their very first episode was on Steven Spielberg, and they posted on their Facebook page, what's your favorite Spielberg movie? Right. We're going to talk about our top 5. And I just wrote in a blurb about how much I love Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Right.
That made their top 5, and I didn't know this was going to happen, but they were reading out comments that had been made on that Facebook page, and they read mine out loud. And so I started writing more. They never didn't read mine out loud.
Oh, that's great.
Never. And that was a huge honor for me. And then they started like actually talking about me on the show, saying that they really loved that I wrote in all the time.
Right.
They made me an admin on their Facebook page. And it just gave me the courage to write. And then I, met up with Scott through other things and whatnot. And you know him, the first time we met, I went up to him at a screening. He gave me the biggest hug, said, "You are an amazing, amazing writer. You should be doing this for a living," in that Scott Mantz way, looks you right in the eye and is so warm and so encouraging. Yeah. And he's like, "Just do it." And that's when I started my own blog.
Wow.
And it has a couple hundred viewers. It's not really big, but it was more for me than anything else. I just enjoy doing it. Yeah. And I think that's what caught Mark Riley's attention.
Gotcha.
So when they were filling out the Schmoes Know Gang for the website, they were very happy to have me on. And then, I did Geek Nation for a while, and now I'm back at Schmoes. So it's a side thing. It's a passion thing for me. It's not my career. I don't get paid for it, but it's another way of expression.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of good at it. So.
Yeah, you are. I
you.
would absolutely vouch for that. I mean, the thing is, I'm kind of slowly walking towards it. And Riley's been pushing me for 3 years, right? And I wrote a couple things for Schmoes Know, but not anything that wasn't consistent about it. And Mark, to his credit, was very patient with me. So it's like, I'm going to start with this podcast. I've kind of been inspired to start a website, and I'm using with a friend of mine that we're just going to start it. And he's like showing me how to do WordPress. Yeah. And so then I'm just going to start writing about everything that I want to write about, And so it's like, because he's like, this could be a great calling card for you if you want to write for another website or whatever. So it's you're right. You just got to do it. That's the number one thing. And who knows what's going to happen for you, whether you succeed or not. And I'm talking about the people who are listening. If you're interested in doing this, like, just do it. Who knows if you're going to succeed or not, but at least you're going to be able to get your voice out there in some way, in some shape or form, and it means something to be able to do that. You're like a release or a venting situation, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it's you first and foremost, you do it for yourself because you have something to say, and it's like bursting out of you.
Right.
And that's, you have always struck me as that kind of person. And that's a great thing. I think that's why I'm so happy you're doing this podcast, and to expand into writing, that just makes sense to me. And so to anybody, like, if you have something to say, put it down. And we have so many Schmo fans who have expressed interest in writing for the site, and we mentor them and we edit their work and we work with them. And some of them are really young, but really passionate or really gung-ho. And like, I love that, because that's the attitude you need to have. It can't be, I'm writing so I can get 1,000 followers. It should be, I'm writing because I have something to say and I want to write. And if the thousands of followers comes after that, then great.
Right.
But it's got to come from inside.
Yeah, it's really important to do that, to find your voice, and then to not imitate anyone else. I mean, you can be influenced, but not imitate, right? You want to write to your style, what you're interested in. That's what people are going to gravitate to. People reach out to me all the time on Twitter and like, what advice do you have for anyone starting a podcast or doing this or that? And I'm always like, find your voice and then do it. So it's great to hear you say the same things, Rachel. Yeah. All right, so with the Schmodown, let's talk about it real quick before we jump into this other thing. Your love of it is growing, isn't it? Like you for a person who's an introvert, you walked out like Galadriel. I mean, you've dialed into these, like smashing. Wait, has that been shown already?
When is this going to air?
Yeah, this is going to air tomorrow. So no, it hasn't been shown.
All
right, so you've done a number of things that I've witnessed, and you've really taken like a duck to water this thing. So you may have waited a while, but once you announced yourself, it was really powerful, and you've had your ups and downs. Which is part of the Schmodown. I tell people all the time, you're not a full participant until you lose, and until you lose in a way that's excruciating, and that you spend the next few days kicking yourself in your ass about, or killing yourself at night about, because that's how this works. Everyone's gone through it. You know, even JT and Snyder, who are champions now, when they went on their solo runs, they had some terrible losses. So, you know, it just kind of works that way. But
I'm fully aware that, like, I mean, you look at people like William Bibiani and Drew McWeeny, like, they're monsters as far as trivia goes. Yeah. But the game is such that luck plays a part, and things can go sideways. In one small little thing can just turn it on its head, and that's part of the drama of the Schmodown. So like, I know my time is coming with that. Like, it's inevitable. So like, part of me sometimes worries that like I started so high because like the only way to go is down. But that's the ride, and that's the thing I'm getting more comfortable with. Hopefully, I'm sure there'll be still plenty of days where I beat myself up. And you know, in the characters and the stuff, like I've talked a lot with Brienne and Stacey because they're the queens of that, and you know, that helps. I'm not an actor. I will never be one. But like, being in the whole Galadriel thing was just that is something that I have grown up with the Lord of the Rings, and the inner geekdom is that's a safe place for me. Yeah. The regular league, the singles league, scares me the most because there are plenty of pie slices that I'm like, please don't land on that. Please don't land on that. You know, I mean, Dan Murrell's the only person I think who doesn't care which one it lands on. I think everybody's got at least a handful that are like just crossing their fingers about. Yeah. But again, that's the fun of it. And that's what I have to remind myself in like the not good days or the really stressed out moments or whatnot, that, you know, it's fun and it's entertainment, and the fans for the most part are amazing. Yeah,
they've been great with you. I've monitored their reactions to you, and everyone's been really, really positive. It's a rare fan that has an issue of negativity towards you that I've discovered. You and Kalinowski have really blown up out of the inner geekdom in that way. Like, people just really like both your personalities. They can connect to both of you because you're like honest and vulnerable while you're playing the game, you know, and your losses resonate with them, your wins resonate with them, and that's a powerful thing. You know, Kalinowski went through the same thing when he lost that Inner Geekdom match, and he reached out to me the next morning. He's like, "Puddin' champ, puddin'," and I said, "I know, brother. Welcome to the Schmodown. This is what it is, man. You have that loss that you're like, and that's part of it. So yeah, maybe it's coming down the road for you. I don't know. So we'll see. All right. So I asked Rachel to come on the show because Glow really blew up on Netflix, and Rachel and I had this really fun exchange on text. And you guys know the Outlaw Nation podcast is about whatever I want to talk about for that week. And it just struck me over the weekend that this is an interesting series to talk about, and especially because it's fronted by a majority women cast, and like Mark Maron and the guy who plays the owner of the thing, you know, and everyone else is women. So I just wanted to ask Rachel, because Rachel had an interesting and I had an interesting back and forth. So I wanted to say,
So tell me, and if you haven't seen the series, maybe turn this down right now or skip past a few minutes, but we're going to talk about it a little bit. Rachel, what did you think about this series overall?
Okay, so the reason our conversation was so interesting was because I had a knee-jerk response to the first 2 episodes, and I stopped watching. And you were the one that convinced me to keep going. And I'm incredibly glad I did. I'm going to say this up top. I do think that this is a great show. There are things about it that I adored. I thought, the look of it, the feel of it, the acting, particularly by Betty Gilpin, really connected to me in her Vanity Fair piece about, growing up as somebody who just wanted to like disappear into the wall, and how like she overcame that, and what this show meant to her as being made by women and starring mostly women, and gave her this confidence. Like that Hear Me Roar piece by her was amazing.
Yeah.
But I just had this personal knee-jerk thing to the first couple of episodes of disappointment. And I haven't really come across too many people who felt that way, and I think you were surprised I felt that way, and that's the thing that we were talking about. I think that we all know that Hollywood has stereotypes, and they play into them, and I don't know a ton about wrestling, but I think that it plays into them as well as part of the production, as part of the soap opera aspect of it. And what I wanted from a show made by women, starring so many women, was more biting commentary on that. I felt that I didn't feel represented in the cast. I was sort of not in the way that I really wanted it to be. And I know it's a dangerous slope to say something should have been.
Right.
Like, to review a movie, you really shouldn't say it should have done this or it should have done that. But given everything around this, and given the way that people were talking about it, because I didn't watch it on Friday when it first dropped, or whatever day it first dropped, everybody was exclaiming about it. And I watched the first 2 episodes, and I'm like, really? Like, you're going to tell me that this is representative of the outcasts women of Hollywood? Alison Brie is supposed to represent the average woman. That casting agent who tells her, I bring you in for whenever a director says he wants a real person or an average person, and it's Alison fucking Brie. Like, there's just like, there's that Hollywood disconnect at play. And I was hoping the show wouldn't play into that. Like, I was hoping the show would elevate. And then to go from that to, Mark Maron's character, who really wants nothing to do with this. Like, he just wants to be a screenplay writer and a director, and he gets thrust into the situation about wrestling, which he knows nothing about. You can tell he doesn't want to be there. And then his inspiration light bulb moment happens when Betty Gilpin, the hot blonde, walks through the door and has a cat fight with the other hot actress. And I'm like, that's the inspiration? Why couldn't the inspiration be the misfit ones, the ones in the background? Now, I totally understand your point. Like, at least they were there. There's multiple races were represented in this, in the extended cast.
Yeah, there's diversity.
As were, body types. And that's my thing. That's a personal issue. I don't ever feel like I'm represented in Hollywood, because they don't want to see average women in Hollywood. Like, geeky girls are just hot women with glasses and oversized t-shirts. They're not actual geeky women. Like, it's
you mean on screen?
On screen,
right,
exactly.
Right.
Like, men of all body shapes, sizes, types make it onto the screen. Women don't get so lucky. Well, and this was the opportunity for them to do that. And they did it for the secondary characters. Okay. But then why couldn't one of them been the main character? Why couldn't some of their B and C stories have a little more bite to them? Like, I really enjoyed Carmen. Yeah. The Native American background, the sort of stereotype of the quiet giant. She had stage fright. Yeah. I'm like, this could go somewhere. Then it disappears. And then it comes back, spoiler alert, in the final match. Right. And the thing that gets her over her stage fright is the dad who hasn't supported her this whole time just happens to be sitting in the audience. Why couldn't it have been her mom? Why couldn't it have been Rhonda, who, like, there's this moment where they bond earlier in the season. Right. It's a little bit of a strange moment, like putting lotion on each other's legs or something. But like, why couldn't it have come... If this is truly about female empowerment, like, I wanted more moments for it to come from the women and not the Mark Maron character, not the Chris Lowell character, not the dad character. So, like, I had this knee-jerk disconnect because, it's the hot women that are the inspiration and the not hot women who are in the background. But Betty Gilpin's character won me over. I think the writing got there at times. And honestly, at the end of the day, I'm really excited about season 2.
Right.
Because I feel like a lot of the season was set up, and a lot of the characters who were in the background, who didn't get much to do, who do represent me in a more general way in terms of, body type and look and appearance, because so much is about appearance, they might get more to do in a season 2.
Right.
But I wish like one of the main characters, because like you were saying with the whole wrestling thing, was that the original women of Glow weren't necessarily gorgeous women, that they represented all kinds of types.
Right, there were. And if you go back on YouTube and watch, they have that opening intro, and you see these are not necessarily what you would say 80s style of attractive women, but they were attractive in the way that they were driven, they were ambitious, and I'm sure everyone, it's all subjective, so maybe people could look at that and find a bunch of women that were attractive. My interest in them wasn't their attraction, it was their skills as wrestlers and their skills as performers, bringing these characters to life, right? That's what wrestling is most, and sometimes I get shit from my friends who are massive wrestling fans, because they argue styles in the ring, and I go, I could give a shit. It's about performance, it's about character development, and it's about look. Do you have the look? Do you have that it thing that people are looking for?
Embracing the character,
exactly,
and throwing yourself into it wholeheartedly.
Right.
And I think Alison Brie's character did that.
Yeah,
that's what was great. Like I loved she studies, and she was working. Like they were concentrating on her. I was just like, just spread the love. Like show the other women doing that too, in a way. So like it got me there, and I might not have continued watching it if you hadn't told me like that it gets there, and that there was more depth to it than I just the first 2 episodes that there was that deep-seated personal issue with Hollywood female representation, and I did not feel that the first 2 episodes did anything to even try to comment or undercut or turn it on its head.
Okay.
It's a show about women by women. Like go for it. And it still could. I hope a season 2 happens. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Let me stop here because I got to close the window. Yep. I hear the birds.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. I should have done this. I'm still incorporating this weird air conditioner.
Oh, is that what that is?
Yeah. Steve gave it to me and I like it, but it's still weird to use it.
Mm-hmm. I like your apartment because it's like older and it's like got character. Mine's a little more modern and whatnot, but I can't complain when I have AC central air in the middle of the summertime.
I know. And it's the first time I ever had air conditioner. I've never used it ever in my life, air conditioner in this place.
Where you grew up?
In DC, I use it in home.
So you know about humidity.
Yeah. So to me, I'm used to it. So all right. So I hear your point. Okay, so picking back up here. Okay, so I hear your point about wanting them to come forward, but there's also the Hollywood reality of nobody knows these women, right? Like even Orange is the New Black, which are some of the people who made this. The main girl is a white, skinny blonde girl, right? Attractive, skinny blonde girl.
Right.
Yes,
the least interesting one in the case.
Right, exactly. But sometimes you need an anchor to make the other people. So I get your point, and you've stated some of my points that we had a back and forth about, but I defer to women on this because to me this is a very female-based show. Yeah. So for me, I'm watching almost from the outside, and I'm connecting, which I think is what's great about the show, with the commonality of human people going through these things, regardless of gender. Right. This idea of wanting to get noticed, this idea of wanting a shot, this idea of like, just give me a shot to show you what I can do. Right. And even in a weird situation like this, and then the idea of her sleeping with her best friend, like that I thought was brilliant about the show is that it's meta within meta. Like it's
very.
The storylines are reflective of what you see in wrestling storylines themselves and what they were trying to bring to life.
The whole soap opera.
Exactly. The whole soap opera aspect of it. Her sleeping with her best friends. Oh, by the way, Harry Crane, always an asshole, always will be an asshole at any show he's ever in. He's just a great asshole. And so, but the Betty Gilpin thing, I thought she did a great job because initially, you're right. I was like, oh, they're bringing in this blonde woman. It really sucks because we've gravitated to Brie. Okay, so I hear your point about wanting them to come
come forward. But there's also the Hollywood reality of nobody knows these women, right? Like even Orange is the New Black, which are some of the people who made this. The main girl is a white, skinny, blonde girl, right? Attractive, skinny, blonde girl.
Right.
Yes,
the least interesting one in the cast.
Right, exactly. But sometimes you need an anchor to make the other people. So I get your point, and you've stated some of my points that we had a back and forth about, but I defer to women on this because to me this is a very female-based show. Yeah. So for me, I'm watching almost from the outside, and I'm connecting, which I think is what's great about the show, with the commonality of human people going through these things, regardless of gender. Right. This idea of wanting to get noticed, this idea of wanting a shot, this idea of like, just give me a shot to show you what I can do. Right. And even in a weird situation like this, and then the idea of her sleeping with her best friend, like that, I thought was brilliant about the show is that it's meta within meta. Like it's the storylines are reflective of what you see in wrestling storylines themselves and what they were trying to bring to life.
The whole soap opera.
Exactly. The whole soap opera aspect of it. Her sleeping with her best friends. Oh, by the way, Harry Crane, always an asshole, always will be an asshole at any show he's ever in. He's just a great asshole. And so, but the Betty Gilpin thing, I thought she did a great job because initially, you're right, I was like, oh, they're bringing in this blonde woman. It really sucks because we've gravitated to Brie, even though she's done these terrible things. You see her as a downtrodden person trying to make it in this business. She has to beg for money from her parents. Everyone who's an actor who doesn't have rich parents, can relate to that moment, when you're starting out. And it felt very relatable to me in that way, so that when her progression happens, and I thought it was actually really well done throughout the series, her growth into taking more and more control. And Mark Maron, he's a jerk and he's doing these kinds of things, but you're not supposed to necessarily feel like he's a good guy, because I feel like this is, and another reason why I think this is typical of wrestling is they present to you this heel, which is Allison Brie's character, by sleeping with her best friend, but she has this earnestness that is genuine, and I think Allison does a fantastic job of bringing her to life in that way, regardless of her looks. I still think she gets there, you know, like Charlize did with Monster. She gets there even though she's a beautiful woman. But as the show progresses, they do a really great job of kind of dirtying up everyone else around her who had been judging her, so that by the end you're completely on board with her, even against the blonde woman who you can tell has these very heel instincts to be the main star. The way she's like arguing about how certain people are taking attention away from her, that speaks ill of her character. That's a
stereotype too, as well.
Those people exist.
Yeah,
narcissist actors exist. So yeah, but I think your point about, I think the reason they brought the dad back at the end is because he had been so against it at the beginning, right? And it kind of worked out in a certain way. And there are wrestling families that are like that are legacies like that. And a lot of female wrestlers are now third-generation wrestlers from those families. Like Tamina Snuka is Jimmy Snuka's daughter. Natalia is Jim the Anvil Neidhart's daughter. She's wrestling. Paige is the daughter of two British wrestlers. So like the women are coming into this influenced by their parents, influenced by and dads were mainly the wrestlers there. So to me, it made sense in that way. But I get your point. Like, could have been more female oriented, could have been more female driven, because even the issue between the two girls is because one slept with the other's husband. Right? It's the man kind of motivating this situation in a way, inadvertently or indirectly, right? Which
is something we've just seen so many times. And I thought that the introduction to this series, just played into a lot of cliches. It didn't break any. And I wanted it to be a little bit, more pointed.
Yes.
And I think it gets there at times. And that's the nature of a show. Like, pilots are a thing. Like, does it get you? Does it grab you? Doesn't it? And I know plenty of people who thought the pilot was amazing. Yeah. So, we can only ever bring to a show or a movie our own points of view. We see it through the lens of who we are, how we look, how we see things, how we feel about things. And it's funny because a lot of people are like, well, at least the secondary characters were more diverse and whatnot. I'm like, but that's like giving breadcrumbs to a starving person. Like, at least is not good enough.
In 2017, at least is not good enough.
It's not.
I think that's fair to say.
but I do understand baby steps, and I do
Yeah.
understand like pushing the envelope where you can in a very male dominated industry. And the creators of this show, definitely have something. There's an it factor here. And as somebody who, unlike you, didn't know much about the wrestling aspect of it, like I did sort of follow along with Betty Gilpin in that, like learning about it when she goes to the actual match and starts to like, it clicks. The soap opera, her soap opera background is actually good for this. And she brought such a humanity to that I couldn't hate her for being beautiful. Like I was just like, there is something here, and they're getting there. And Alison Brie is always, I've loved her since Community, and I think that she treads the line of being annoying and relatable well. Yeah. So there is a ton to love here.
Yeah,
but it was a very complicated reaction from me. And it has more to do with me and how I see myself and how I see the industry at large and the issues there for women. But I have to also applaud that this show even got made. Yeah. And that, that it has the power to, hopefully with future seasons, to really push the envelope in the way I want it to.
Well, and this is an interesting point you make, Rachel, because you do see a lot of the positives about the show, but you're also able to pull out some of the issues or the negatives you feel about the show. And this is important in criticism. And some people, like with the Transformers stuff, with other stuff that's going around, they've been like, how can you say you like something but then point out all the problems with it? And it's like, but that's
because
part of
nothing in life is perfect.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, even The Godfather has issues.
Yes.
So every film has its problems, and that's just part of it. But like with what you were just talking about, I contrast this with Girl Boss. Girl Boss got canceled. Yeah. My friend Kay Cannon created and wrote that show. Oh, wow. Yeah, and so I've known her for a while, and so I was championing the show, but I also couldn't deny that she was an unlikable character initially for the first 7 or 8 episodes.
Oof, it's a long time to be unlikable.
Exactly, for a 12-episode show. But her interview, Kay's interview is illuminating because Kay was like, I wanted to do something where women are not given the typical, stereotypical, redeeming stuff, which is what you're talking about here in Glow. Right. So the problem may not be the creators or the writers. The problem may be us as an audience, that we want to only gravitate to these tropes and cliches and storylines and happy endings that we're used to versus what something like Girl Boss does, which is present us with someone who's really an unlikable character. Can we get past our desire to like someone to try to understand this kind of person or stay with them long enough to go with it? So it's an interesting trend because she was pushing back against the Netflix. For the rumors of what I heard, she was pushing back a lot against the Netflix notes because they wanted to soften Britt Robertson, I think that's the actress's name, character more. Yeah. And she pushed back against it and wanted to make her this kind of don't give a fuck person who is just like uses other people, does these terrible things, and force people to go like, you would be okay with a male character doing this. Can you be okay with a female character doing this? Like Tony Soprano was not a good person in any way, shape, or form, yet there was something about his magnetism as an actor and performance and acting that kept us coming back. Is that because he was male? I don't know. So these aren't
easy questions to answer for sure. And what we need in Hollywood is more people like your friend, and to change the conversation, to challenge audiences. And I get that there's a place for popcorn entertainment, but there's also a place for entertainment that pushes us and makes us think about things and makes us question how we view things. And we're in a golden age with all of that. I mean, there's so much content to do that. And it's sad that, that didn't take, but I hope it doesn't stop other people, men, women, people of color, whatever, to keep pushing the envelope with these kinds of shows, because there's something for everybody. There is an audience out there for that. I'm number one in line.
And I will say the reason I want to start writing is not only just to get into blogs, but also to figure out if I can end up writing a TV series at some point based on my own experience as a Latino living in a first generation Latino living in a predominantly white area, and how I found my way into it. It's like, is there something to be written here? So it's more just like exploring it. Doesn't mean I'll sell it, doesn't mean it'll be anything, but it's a more matter of exploring these kinds of things for my own personal
Again,
growth
it's coming
and
from
development.
you. It's a personal story, and it's something that very easily could be something interesting to audiences, especially when you look at like today's landscape and something like Master of None. Like, people are interested in those stories.
Oh my God, that's such a great show. And a lot of people a lot of women really enjoyed Glow. So a lot of my female
Yes.
pundits in the industry spoke glowingly about, so to speak, for lack of a better term, on Twitter and on Instagram and on social media. Like, we're very positive about it. So it's interesting to hear that there are some things that for you bothered you as well, because I respect you and your analysis.
Thank you.
And your intelligence.
I appreciate that.
Oh, honestly.
Yeah. There's a ton to like. I hope people take away from this interview that I did like the majority of it. I stuck with it, and thanks to your recommendation, and I got to the end, and I see so much potential for moving forward. So I'm excited for a lot of the things it could be, and I did, gravitate towards a number of moments and scenes, and I thought certain dialogue was really well done, and it was also fun. I mean, because entertainment should be fun to some extent too. But yeah, I saw those too, and there was sort of like am I crazy? Like, everybody has just been in love with this. I did not see a negative thing, and I was just like, but I just had this visceral, like, really, to the first couple of episodes, But
this is important. This is important. The one person standing in the wilderness screaming against the tide, screaming against the hordes, I think is important because it forces us to stop going with a groupthink for just a second.
Yeah.
And if you're smart enough and you're open enough to hear the other side, explore, and you may discount all the person's points, but in the end, it's still worth having some sort of analytical conversation, or at least within yourself, if not with the person, the actual person, about what the points are that are being brought up. I do this with I had a Dan's Lab about Transformers on Monday with Screen Junkies, and Dan and I had a great back and forth, and it was fun to be able to just talk about it. And I could tell he was just like so frustrated that I would not agree with what he was going for. And to Dan's credit, he let me talk about it as I spoke about it. He didn't like try to tear me apart necessarily. He just felt his viewpoints about it. And that's important, I think. As the lone voice in the wilderness about Transformers, I think it's important to have these dialogues because it kind of opens it up and it lets people breathe a little bit easier about these kinds of situations.
And it's not about agreement.
Yeah,
it's about acknowledging that everybody everybody's opinion is valid.
Yeah.
Especially, if it's well thought out. Like, you're not just saying, I love Transformers because it blows shit up.
Right.
Like, bottom line, end of story. Like, no, like, you have legitimate reasons, and you are not the only one because they make billions of dollars.
Yes,
so, like,
true.
there is an argument on both sides, and it's fantastic that, like, that Dan would hear you.
Yeah.
And that you would hear him, and you probably both walked away still firmly believing in your side.
Absolutely.
But that's not the point. Isn't to change minds. The point is to have a healthy debate, and get all the points out there, and maybe make people think, oh, I hadn't thought about it that way.
Right. That's always the goal, right?
Yep.
Well, let's talk about something real quick before we go that we both agree with, and that is Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones, which is coming up, and I think we're going to be doing a couple episodes here for Collider before Game of Thrones launches, before our recap show launches, and for the July. So now, you've seen the trailers.
Oh, yeah.
What are you looking forward to this season? Like, what are you excited about this season?
What last season started.
Okay.
So I am a book reader. I've been reading these books over and over again for 10 years. Before there was a show, I was into these books. I'm a huge fantasy reader. You guys saw me come out as Galadriel, Lord of the Rings, all of it.
That's just the tip of the iceberg.
This is my wheelhouse, guys. So we're past the books.
Right,
I had to come to terms with that last season and to some extent season 5. Yeah. But what was amazing about last season was the feeling of coming togetherness. Mm-hmm. Like, characters were meeting up. Some new characters were meeting up. Some were reuniting. I mean, the Jon Sansa moment, even though they'd never really established much of a relationship like in season 1. Oh my God, that brings tears to my eyes every time. Yeah. So the idea and the hints that were given that like Jon and Dany could actually meet this season is like gives me goosebumps. The idea that, Dany's finally heading to Westeros and putting when she puts her hand on the soil outside Dragonstone, I'm like, oh, this is the thing we've been waiting for.
Right.
And then to know that like they're still all fighting over the Iron Throne when there's this other thing happening up north that like is finally, about to like burst at the seams, like the walls coming down. Winter is here. Like that's the catchphrase for this season. all of that, like, there's just such a level of anticipation of it all coming together, and the characters being together and fighting the ultimate battle of good and evil, dragons versus ice, all of that. So it's this, last season started this sense of momentum, and I feel like this season, like, the wave's gonna like crash on the shore, and that we're just gonna get so much.
Yeah, and it feels like Benioff and Weiss understand that now that they're away from off the books, that they can turn it into a for lack of a better term, a TV show. They can start to bring, like you were saying, bringing things a bit more together, because the frustration, there's only so long you can tease me before
it's true.
We don't have sex, and then I go away going like, what the crap, And so I feel like the first, sometimes it feels like Blue Balls, this series, because there's like, I don't
think I want to recommend the books to you then, because I think you'd have some.
Well, books are different. Books are different because
True.
I love different licenses, but if I'm watching something, I'm like, I want some kind of resolution. With books, I like going along with the resolution.
Sure.
There's a difference. And so with this whole situation, I am too feel like it's coming together. I think I want to see what happens with Cersei and Jaime. I want to see what Brienne is going to do, Brianna Tarth.
Her.
Yeah, I want to see where all this is going to play out, and Sansa and Littlefinger, and what's the influence that Jon's going to have on Sansa with Littlefinger.
Is Arya going to end up at Winterfell? Bran likely is too. So
Bran, right.
The end of the last trailer where she recites that, the when winter comes, the lone wolf dies, and but the pack stays together. Like that, again, chills. And it also just, it Starks are coming together.
Yeah.
The wolf pack is going to be reunited. And I just thought, who's the lone wolf? Is it Jon? Please don't be Jon.
Well, I mean, if you break, I would recommend, I forget the guy's name, Control-Alt-Shift or Control-Shift, something like that. He does these amazing breakdowns. I think he's Australian or British, but he does these amazing breakdowns of Game of Thrones. He did a breakdown of the trailer, and the lone wolf theory is talked about. So if you want to go there and maybe have some spoilers for the season, knock yourself out. If you don't want any spoilers, because like when he said that, I was just like, oh, maybe this isn't going to end up the way people think it's going to end up.
Yeah.
And it could be a classic George R.R. Martin ending,
very
in a way that like, and which frustrate people through Benioff and Weiss.
Right.
So it would be so ironic if that's what ends up happening. People are super pissed about it in the end. But I don't know. Do we see Dany on the throne eventually? Like just as
I think that I don't even think there's going to be a throne for her to like actually sit on it at some point.
Wow.
Like I feel like she probably would triumph over Cersei. But I don't think she's the one who takes Cersei out. I'm in full agreement with the popular theory that Jaime takes Cersei out. I mean, and it's not even just about the Valonqar theory and the prophecy. It's more just his trajectory of his character. The fact that he already has killed a sovereign ruler.
Yes.
Because that person was about to wreak havoc on millions of lives. Like Cersei's there. Cersei's gone off the reservation. Right. She lost all her kids. Like, and I think he's going to see finally like the destruction that she's wrought, and I think he has to be the one that ends that reign. And then Dany steps into the void, but not to sit on an iron throne because it's White Walkers. Like at that point, White Walkers are going to be the only thing that matters and the only thing that everybody has to now come together and deal with.
Sometimes you don't see the craziness of your partner until it's too late.
It's very true.
Male or female. Sometimes you don't see it till it's absolutely too late. Well, Rachel, thanks so much for taking the time and sitting here on the Outlaw Nation podcast. I was so happy when you said you could do it, and I know we had to work schedules around, so I'm so glad you came on.
Yeah, I love your podcast. From day one, I was hoping that I'd get to come on. And when you originally said we could talk Game of Thrones, I was like, yes, like I could do that. I could talk you under the table on Game of Thrones.
I'm sure you could.
But then the whole glow thing happened, and it seemed like the perfect storm of a topic for us. And, I had a great time, and hopefully people won't skewer me for my opinions. But
please don't.
But I feel, good talking about them. And I think that all points of view for that show should be out there. And
are you going to write about
what happens? I haven't ever written about TV.
Okay.
I mean, and I am on an editing gig right now, which means my writing is not I'm not as prolific as I'd like to be with that. Plus there's all that studying for the Schmodown that you talk about. Like I don't even watch that much TV anymore. I used to watch a lot of TV, and now I just watch movies, and movies that I don't really want to be watching because they're in categories that like I don't watch for a reason, but they get asked about on the Schmodown, and so yes, I watched Roadhouse.
Ooh,
Yeah. Oh my
look
God.
at that.
I am not a 14-year-old boy, so I don't really get that movie.
You are ahead of me. I've never seen that movie.
Really?
There are some movies I don't mind losing on because I just will not break my pride and watch. It's true.
I broke my pride, John. I went there.
I get it. No, I get it. I see so many people. You know, you mentioned Brienne and Stacy. There's so many other people who like sit down and study and read, and I study and then I stop a week before a match.
I think that
because
that's
I just
probably
let it go.
smart because
Yeah.
in my first couple matches, I was definitely like, I would watch movies and then I would just like jot down,
Yeah.
like that would make a good question, or that's a location, or that's a thing.
Right.
Like I'm almost always solid on directors, actors, and actresses, but if you start asking more specifics, then like, so I'll jot them down on my phone and whatnot, and like before a match, I'll be like scrolling through. I'm like, what are the odds that I'm going to get asked a question about one of the things that I have jotted down over the last... Next to none. Like, I
Right.
should not do that to myself. So,
What-
like, I'm working out how to approach the few days leading up to a match still.
What happens is you'll get asked a question about something that you thought in passing. That's what happens sometimes. You get asked, and you thought in passing, oh, I should take, like the Ant-Man question.
Yeah.
Honestly, like I thought to myself, I should just look at the cast list of the Marvel movies. No, it'll never be that basic. It won't come down to that. Won't be important. It'll be a 1-pointer. It's no big deal.
Right.
I had no idea it was going to be a 5-pointer, and so it's just like you just never know, and
You
that's what's
can't.
great about the
and
game.
there's thousands and thousands of movies.
Yeah.
And at this point, if you look at the back of the set and you see all those pie slices, there's like 50, 60 categories like that no human being except maybe Dan Merle
Yeah.
can possibly have seen all of those,
Right.
nor should you, to be honest.
Good point. Yes.
So we do the best we can, right?
Right on. All right. Well, Rachel, would you please tell people where they can find you on social media if they want to follow you or read your work?
Sure. I'm on Twitter at Rachel J. Cushing, and then my movie reviewing blog is getrealwithrachel.com. That's real with 2 E's. There's not been a lot of recent movies up there. I mean, I had to write about Wonder Woman. There was no way I wasn't. But yeah, I'm hopefully once I finish this job and have some free time, we'll get some more content up
Will
there.
you come back later on in the season and talk about, later on my podcast and talk about Game of Thrones?
Yes.
Awesome. I want.
You don't even have to ask.
You have a standing offer to come back whenever something huge happens.
I will be running here the next morning and be like, "Did you see that shit?"
I'm just waking up. Oh, let me plug in the mics. Hold
Exactly.
on. All right, well, Rachel, thanks so much again for coming on Outlaw Nation podcast, and I'm sure we'll have you back. Like I said.
Thank you. I had fun.
All right, guys, we'll be right back right after this break. All right, there you go. I told you. Rachel's amazing. Rachel's great. I have such a fondness for her, and she's been one of the few people I've met in the Schmodown, in the whole process, rather, of Collider and Schmoes Know, that I just genuinely enjoyed talking with film about. And, we've been friends, and, I've been kind of guiding her through the Schmodown at times, the emotional pitfalls and the trials and tribulations of being in the Schmodown. So it was awesome that she found some time to talk to me. And I thought she had some really interesting points on Glow. Something you can't just always go with the herd mentality. So I was really happy that she was able to talk about that a little more, flesh out a little more of her points and talk about it a little more knowledgeably and give us some things to think about, some possibilities to think about in terms of looking at the show and some of the writing and some of the character development. So there's nothing wrong with a little criticism to kind of like see how much farther a show can go than where it's already gone. So a lot of fun with her. All right, so next up we've got William Viviani. Bibbs took some time out, and I went to his place and recorded our interview. It's so much fun, and he's such I don't know what to tell you, but he's such a really smart guy about film, and he really loves it. And I walked in, and his place is like a museum to film. It's like a shrine. That's what I would say. It's a shrine to film. And I'm just blown away at the number of movies, the volume of movies that he owns. It's almost overwhelming. There's like these massive monoliths of movies that are there. It just blew me away. And immediately I felt home. I felt I was at home, because it's like I love movies so much, so it's nice to see someone who loves them as much as I do, and enjoy conversations with them. So, all right. So coming up next, William Bibiani sits down with me, and we just talk about everything. The Schmodown. We talk about film criticism, like I was saying earlier in this episode, and then we talk about Transformers, and then we talk about some TV shows that pop up as we're discussing his podcasts. So, and there you go. All right, cool. Coming up next, William.
All right, welcome everybody back to the Outlaw Nation podcast. Listen, I've been talking about this this whole episode, and the time has come. Finally, William Bibiani is now here to be a guest on the show. You guys know him. He writes for Crave Online. He hosts the B Movies podcast, Cancel Too Soon, which is an awesome podcast about TV shows that were done in one season and never were seen again. And he has people on there to talk about it. We're still negotiating what TV show I'm going to come on and do with him, but I'm very happy he has come on to the podcast to talk to us today. Hi, William.
Growl, growl. How you doing, John?
Good, man. Good.
Thanks for having me on. We've been dancing around being on each other's podcasts for a really long time.
Yeah.
And it never works out. I was almost on Cinephiles once, and
that's right.
Didn't just the timing was bad.
We're gonna have you. It's just weird stuff happening because
we're all very busy, and
yes.
we all have flexible schedules, but they fill up at different times.
They really
we
do.
Never have the same afternoon free. So it was really, really great that I'm able to argue with you now.
Yeah.
about this.
Well, this is interesting because some people are saying, "Oh, the Horsemen are broken." We're fine. I want you to know we're fine. So I want to have
as
Bibiani
human
on.
Beings.
Yes.
John Roca and William Bibiani. We're cool.
But I wanted to have you because we were having a back and forth online about the Transformer situation, and it just occurred to me the Outlaw Nation podcast is very fluid for me. It's like whatever's in my mind, then I want to set it up and talk about it. And I thought it was an interesting conversation to have about film criticism. But first, I wanted to get people to get to know you. Like, where were you from originally? How did you get into all this? Like, I know we talked about it on the Smoes No Show, but if you want to do it in a microcosm, maybe
happy to fill everybody in.
Yeah.
People who aren't familiar with me, my name is William Bibiani. I grew up in Pasadena, California. Ended up not going very, very far. Went to UCLA School of Theater, Film, and Television.
Wow.
And I bounced around doing odd jobs in the industry for a while, and ultimately I found my place writing about movies.
Right.
For various websites, including Geekscape or the California Literary Review or IGN and Crave Online and Blumhouse.com. And
wow.
Fangoria. I've done a lot.
Right.
And, a big part of what I do and why I want to do what I do is I want to share my passion for cinema.
Yeah.
And I also want to try, whenever possible, to raise the level of discourse about cinema. And that includes, obviously, great, artistic, wonderful cinema. Your Moonlights, your The Handmaiden, your all the great stuff, for example, that came out recently, and also the trash, and everything in between.
Right.
When I was young and I was watching people like Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert, they were considered like these respectable critics, and indeed they really, really were.
Yeah.
And they also hated things that I loved. Like you go back and watch their reviews of any of the Friday the 13th movies,
right,
which I'm not claiming are high art, but there was something to them. I think they connected for a reason. And just to hear the absolute inability to understand why anyone would even remotely enjoy them.
Yeah.
You can not like them, and you can say we don't like what they're doing and still have the discourse.
Right.
I'm trying to, even though movies are still a very passionate medium, they're trying to evoke emotion. And if a movie genuinely evokes a negative emotion, even if it's hatred, that is valid. And it's okay to say, I hated this movie, so long as you can say, I hated it for these reasons.
Right.
So I want to share my love for things, and when I don't like something, I want to be able to talk about it with people and get them to understand why I didn't care for it, and then sometimes hear back from them and hear them tell me why they love it, and then maybe we can come around, we can find common ground, or at least we can agree to disagree.
Yeah.
I think some people think that passion in the film criticism world has to be sort of hyperbolic.
Right.
There's a lot of things that I love that I have a lot of problems with. Baby Driver, for example, it's out right now. Wonderful movie. There are things I don't like about it, but overall, it's gangbusters, and I want to tell everyone to see it. Just as there are bad movies that have positive qualities, then we can talk about those. So I don't know. I guess my point is I'm trying to increase the conversation about it, which is one of the reasons why I love doing podcasts, because even if I'm writing an essay or a review, I'm kind of inserting myself in the position of someone reading it and trying to talk to someone. It's a little one-sided.
Right.
And I think it's more interesting to have a conversation, invite people to join in on that conversation on Twitter, or have that conversation on a podcast. And, I do all these things. I do the B Movies podcast. We review movies. I do Cancel Too Soon. We review historically forgotten TV shows.
Yeah, it's great stuff. So, but how did you fall? How did you get into film writing? Like, what was it? Like, obviously, you have a desire to do it, but everyone has a desire. A lot of people have a desire to do it. It's a matter of how did you find your way into writing for stuff?
Well, I wrote about movies a lot when I was in film school, and I enjoyed that sort of artistic interpretation aspect of the art form. But there was I just fell into it basically when I met Jonathan London over at Geekscape. Okay. And I know a lot of people in the industry who got their start with Jonathan London or who know him and who he's helped out. He's great. He's a wonderful human being. And we met through my roommate who was shooting a short film Jonathan London was doing. I ended up going on his podcast to promote a short film I'd acted in very briefly. Okay. And we just got to talking and we realized I had a lot of things to say about various geek topics. And I did a few articles for him. Then I did a lot more. Then I realized I was kind of unhappy doing anything else. Yeah. So I worked my butt off. I was on unemployment for the better part of a year. I told myself, okay, I have unemployment coming because I got fired from a job. Right. I have had it for 1 year. I'll be able to get by. I'm going to spend 1 year writing film criticism, trying to get a career going. And if at the end of 1 year I can't make a living at this, I'm going to do something else. Wow. The day my last unemployment paycheck arrived, I got hired at Crave. So I thought to myself, okay, this was meant to be. Yeah. So it's very, very hard to get paid enough at this job to do this job and nothing else. Yes. It's incredibly difficult. And then again, we're not talking big numbers. Yeah. We're not talking, I do not make a lot of money, but I just don't have to have a job at Staples anymore. Right. Which was a good job. Yeah. I was very thankful for that job. With a future, you could be a manager, right? All those kinds of things. Yeah. You could run the store. But, that was, this was a goal. Can I turn this into a career? Yeah. And I worked my hinder off for a year to try to make that happen, and I was able to, and I'm very proud of that. And you should be. That's what's important here is like if you want to do it, great, do it, but you got to dedicate the time. You got to find the ways to do it. And when the windows open, you got to take advantage of the windows. Like you took advantage of that whole year. And it probably made you an incredibly better writer to be fully committed to it for a whole year. Absolutely. Yeah. When I was in film school, one of the things they used to tell us, and this was kind of like the first thing every teacher told us in every class, was if you're in this industry to be famous or make money, there are easier ways. Success in the entertainment industry for most people, and you'll be very lucky to have this, is a career. Yep. Is you work, you get to be part of the industry, you make enough money to be comfortable, get by. That is the measure of success that you can realistically hope for. Yeah. A few people make it really, really, really big. Yeah. And that's great. You can't plan for that. But you can work really, really hard. You can make the connections. You can prove you have value. And you can make a living at it. And I'm very, very proud that I'm able to do that. I'm hoping to keep progressing and do more in the future. But, yeah, that was a big deal for me. Yeah, people don't understand. Writers aren't getting like $250 an article or $500 an article. Like people think it's that much, and it's not. It's really not. They're getting the opportunity to write about these kinds of things that you yourself might want to write about. But it's not six figures. Or anything like that. You've got to work so hard to live it. Yeah, go ahead. No, it's true. Very, very, very few writers in this industry, and there are a few. There's some who have like enough of a following, who have enough clout, who work for a major outlet, who do make very, very comfortable amounts of money. The majority of us are getting by. Yeah. And we're lucky to do it. And every time a publication closes its doors, that's just that's just the glacier. That's just the iceberg just melting a little further, and everyone's just scrambling to get back on it. There's no room for anyone else anymore. It's a hard gig. Yeah. It's a hard gig. It seems easy to do because you just watch a movie and you write something. Right. First off, doing that better than other people to the extent that you're worth paying money for it, that's hard to find. But beyond that, it's just there's not that many gigs. You're all competing for the same job. And the fact of the matter is there's a lot of people in the industry a lot longer than I am. Right. Who are arguably more interesting and more valuable than I am because they have that experience. Right. I've had the privilege to know people who've been in the industry for a really long time. I'm not close friends with them or anything. I'm not going to name drop, but I know some name critics who've been in the industry for more years than I've been alive.
Sure.
I can't catch up to that. They've been watching so many movies for so long that even if I dedicate my whole life to trying to catch up, they have just had so much of a head start.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that's really, really tricky. As young people enter the industry, as young people become film critics and film writers and film personalities on YouTube, they don't necessarily have that expertise because they haven't had the opportunity to cultivate it as much. No matter how much you think you know about cinema when you're 20, and it can be a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to know.
Right. And it isn't just seeing all the movies ever created by the history of mankind. It's you growing up as a person too, which changes your perspective, changes what you get out of certain movies as you get older, get married, have kids, have your heart broken, lose a family member, whatever. It's all going to color how you return to these movies as you get older. So your film criticism is going to deepen. It can become complex.
A lot of the younger people in the industry, and I don't say younger people with any
no disdain
context whatsoever.
Of course not.
Just you're younger. A lot of the industry right now, what people are looking for is stuff about some of the more popular franchises right now. Your Marvel movies, your DC movies, your Harry Potter, all that, and all that stuff is great, by the way. Star Wars, all of that stuff is great, but it tends to cater towards a very adolescent mindset because that's where a lot of the market is, and that's what people are. That's when people connect to these things. I connected to comic books when I was a kid, and so I still have that connection now.
Right.
But there's so many different facets of the art form, so many different artists working on a higher level that aren't getting the level of discourse that they should be. And you hit the nail on your head. You have personal experience, and all of a sudden, these stories reveal themselves to you. Like, I got the gist of stories about, families going through grief.
Yeah.
And then my father died.
Yeah.
And I got it.
Yep.
And I understood. And even some of the ones that I would still write off as a little maudlin, kind of, pushing the easy buttons. But they push my buttons. And I get it. I'm like, oh, wow, that is such a powerful emotion. And you just barely have to tickle it to get a reaction out of me. And that is potent cinema.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's the sort of thing you just don't understand before you've had a lot of life experience.
It's really true. One of the films I mention all the time, Memories of Me, that Billy Crystal, Alan King film from the 80s, destroys me every time.
Wow.
Because I lost my father. I lost him in 2008. So for me, those films to go back and revisit are more devastating than they ever were when I first watched it. Yeah. And so it's just like, you're right. It's just those things that kind of bleed into your personal life. They slide out into the movies. And all of a sudden, like I had my heart broken a couple of years ago and then last year again by these girls I dated. All of a sudden, these songs that I've been listening to for 20 fucking years
finally make sense.
Yes, they make sense. I'm like, why wasn't I listening? And it's like taking the red pill or whatever, the blue pill.
I had that same reaction when Eyes Wide Shut came out in 1999.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, because, Stanley Kubrick was a god, but by that point, he hadn't made a movie in about 13,
it was a long time.
12 years.
Yeah.
It was 87, Full Metal Jacket.
Right.
And Full Metal Jacket was already just part of the pop culture landscape. The Shining was part of the pop culture landscape. Doctor Strange was part of the pop culture landscape. And they're more accessible films in a lot of ways because they have this sort of genre element. And so everyone was looking forward to this new Eyes Wide Shut movie. Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman were at the height of their popularity. Stanley Kubrick was a legend. And everyone, all the young film geeks at my high school were like, ooh, there's going to be a new Kubrick film and it's going to be amazing. And then it's got porn in it. Holy God, this is going to be amazing. And then we go into the theater and we have no idea what the hell they're talking about.
Right.
And it wasn't until about like a year later that someone broke my heart and I felt the pang of jealousy for the first time. Like I understand. I didn't just understand the concept of it. I knew how jealousy can sort of affect you and it can taint the way that you perceive other people's reactions. And then I realized that entire movie is about a guy whose male confidence has been completely destroyed just by one kind of off the cuff, not even a big deal revelation. And now everything he sees is this warped mirror image of his own inadequacy.
Yeah.
And it's such a great movie, but I needed to experience something in order to appreciate it.
Yeah. I think it's important. I mean, and this is something that's so great about reading your criticism, William, is that you can hear your voice in the right. Like having met you now and spent time with you and gotten to know you,
when I read your work now, it's like I can hear your voice saying the things that you're saying, because you can be quite adamant about your points. Like this is this, and you create space for conversation and certainly a back and forth. But in your articles, it's very clear what your point of view is on certain films. No, it's true.
I think that's a huge compliment. Thank
you.
You.
It's very true. I don't know how you could even when I went back and read the Transformers article, which was the genesis of you coming on the show. Honestly, I went back and read it because I was like, because I was going to go on Dan's lab to go up against Dan. And I was like, I need information. I need other people who have other ideas about these films. And I was like, I stumbled on yours. I was like, oh, I got to read this. And it was really interesting to read about it because your point of view was it wasn't negative. It was, this film doesn't live up to standards that I want it to live up to because it has potential to do these things, and we need to demand that from art. We need to demand better from art.
My philosophy was, I hear a lot of people, less so with the latest one. I think the latest one, I think a lot of even like the dedicated fans are starting to admit, well, it's not great. But I've for many years, I would talk to people who love the Transformers movies, and for the record, because some people listen to my podcast understand my stance on this. I like the first Transformers. Okay.
Yeah.
Second one is a big hot mess.
It really is.
The third one doesn't actually make me that angry. I think the plot's more coherent and some of the action's really, really good.
Yeah.
It's not a great movie, but I enjoy it enough.
Right.
And then Age of Extinction is, again, another hot mess, and I think the fifth one just physically hurt me to watch it. It really, really hurt me a lot to watch the sit through this movie.
Why? Well, okay, go ahead.
Okay, well, I was just saying.
laying the groundwork.
My point is that I hear a lot of people dismiss them by saying, oh, it's just a movie.
Right.
Or why can't you turn your brain off and enjoy the movie? As if being able to turn your brain off is something that you need to brag about now. Like that's not a good thing. I can enjoy many a bad movie, or many a silly movie, or many a lowbrow movie, and leave my brain on, and say to myself, yeah, it's not very good, but it's entertaining enough. It's escapist entertainment. It's light. It's not offending my sensibilities or saying anything terribly negative. But honestly, a big part of why I think we need to take the Transformers movies seriously from a critical perspective, and why it's okay to constantly criticize if you feel that it's valid and you have a good argument to make, is because they have that impact, because they are that powerful. Because people tell you, oh, just turn off your brain and enjoy it. Okay, I distrust anyone who says, I don't want you to think about what I'm about to yell at you for the next 2.5 hours, and a lot of what I'm about to yell at you is sexist, casually racist, really propagandistic about the military, but don't think about it, just accept. And I'm like, no, we need to talk about this. And I also think the other factor is that it's okay to say, this is not a particularly well-made movie, but I enjoy watching it. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's totally fine. But that doesn't mean you're not allowed to have standards.
Right.
You're allowed to say, okay, there's all these dumb action movies that are vying for my attention, for my money. I like these ones, but I don't like these ones.
Right.
You don't have to like all of them.
Right.
It's okay to say, yeah, but these ones aren't made to my specifications. These ones are incoherent. These ones don't do it for me.
Right.
So anyway, I wanted to get that point of that article across.
No, and it was a good point. And it's what so for me, I pushed back a little bit because I was like, well, I feel that it's a correct phrase to say, because when I go into these Transformers movies, I become a 12-year-old boy again, and I don't look at like, oh, what's the plot? What's the coherent plot? I don't. And to me, I get the casual racism, but I haven't seen it since the second movie, and maybe I'm not looking hard enough. But I'm really hypersensitive to that.
Well,
I'm not sensing it. Yeah,
I'll say right there. I mean, and when I say casual, I just mean it's off the cuff. There's a lot of stereotyping, and I understand one of the reasons why he does it is that it's shorthand for a lot of these Transformers characters, because they don't get a lot of dialogue, they don't get a lot of personality.
Right.
So here's the fat one. And here's the one that is Japanese, and the only thing we know about Japanese culture is samurai. So he talks like a samurai.
Okay.
You know, like that kind of thing.
Okay.
Where there's this an exchange between Mark Wahlberg and the actor who, I think he was in
this last one?
Yeah, in this last one. It's
Jarrod Carmichael?
It's just a sheriff who like lives outside.
Oh,
of this,
yes. The guy everyone thinks looks like me. Yeah, the cruiser.
Like, you know, like, it's fine. I look like John Goodman, so that's fine. I don't have a problem with it. But Mark Wahlberg just says something casually racist, and the guy says, that's pretty racist.
Yeah.
And Mark Wahlberg doesn't like apologize or nothing. He's just like, and that's the way it is. You know, there's one black character in the movie, and of course
Carmichael.
He is a panicky, not particularly useful character to the plot. And these portrayals, again, especially when they reach a wide audience, I think that's worth commenting on, and I think it's worth decrying, especially when you're gearing it to little kids, because we're telling kids that this is fine. It's fine.
Right.
I don't know if it's fine.
And I take your point. But Isabella Moner is a Latina actress. They don't put her in a sombrero. They don't put her in a poncho. Or
they do objectify her.
Well, no.
Yes.
Do you mean like as a sexual object?
Not
15 years old?
Not cinematically.
Right.
Narratively. When we meet Isabella Moner in this film, we don't actually meet her originally. We meet like 3 or 4 little Sandlot age boys. And they're running into the sort of demilitarized zone in the post-Transformers apocalypse America.
Yeah, some stadium, yes.
And they get themselves into a whole bunch of wacky trouble.
Really
and Isabella Moner saves them. And she's a total badass. And she's smart. She fixes Transformers. And she's very aware and understands that Transformers are people too. And then all of these boys who, again, if we're looking at this, and I know a lot of people say, what's the demographic for Transformers? It's those kids.
Right.
That age of kids. All of those kids respond to her as, wow, she's really strong and independent and smart. She'd be a great girlfriend. That's what they get out of it. And that is not a good behavior to encourage, especially when later in the film, our female protagonist, like the great granddaughter of Merlin, who is introduced as an intelligent historian, career woman, not necessarily interested in romance, even though everyone around her says you got to find yourself a man, has no tolerance for stupidity. She meets Mark Wahlberg. Mark Wahlberg responds to her in an openly sexist manner, and she goes, yeah, I'll fall in love with that. That's kind of a thing.
Okay. So let's do this. Let's do this.
Right.
First, Jarrod Carmichael. That guy pushes back against racism all the time. It's a crux of a lot of his stand-up. So I'd be surprised he would take a character that he would view as overtly racist or even casually racist.
Okay,
and
fair enough.
And in his Jarrod Carmichael show, this is something he talks about in Hollywood all the time, kind of like Hollywood Shuffle with Robert Townsend. He points that stuff out. So
That's fair.
I don't think he's necessarily racist in the movie. I think he's funny. He's a computer science guy. He's trying to break out of this kind of stuff, and he's embracing that. Isabella, I can see that. Yeah, the blonde kid says like, do you have a boyfriend, blah, blah, blah. She pushes back against it. And the same thing with Laura Haddock. She pushes back against the old ladies who are telling her, you got to get with somebody. But I think the twist happens in that she objectifies him. Like he takes his shirt off and he's got his abs. She comments on his physical appearance. Like, and there's a twist there.
Do you feel like this film is made from the female perspective?
No. But I'm saying it's not as bad as Michael Bay has been. Like, this is a thing. Okay. You can definitely destroy Michael Bay in the other Transformers movies. Okay. He's objectified Megan Fox, Rosie Huntington-Whiteley. Absolutely. But this is his style, right? So
that doesn't make it okay.
No, of course not. Of course, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying why, particularly this one, everyone's getting such an angry, visceral response to, because he's been doing it all through the whole franchise.
And I've been complaining throughout the whole franchise.
Well, there we go.
Be fair.
So maybe you've hit your what do they call it? Saturation point. You're just like, enough is enough already.
Well, listen, I don't think they're particularly coherent films.
Yes,
I think they're films that have a very short attention span to the extent that they no longer become. I don't even need them to be like complicated or meaningful. I just want them to make some vague amount of sense.
Right.
And a lot of it is just incident. And one thing you notice with Michael Bay's work is that he kind of keeps everything dialed to 10.
Yes.
Every scene, whether it's a dialogue scene or an action sequence or a moment of introspection, is played at the absolute peak intensity, to the extent where I kind of get that when you watch a Transformers movies, you feel like you've been through something.
Yeah.
But it feels traumatic to me. It feels like, he's just desperately trying to catch you and grab you and shake you. It's like, there are robots. I'm like, I get that there are robots, Michael. I get that there are robots. I want them to do something that I can understand. There's a lot of issues here. And I'm glad that you're able to sort of push back. Because I know these movies have their fans.
Yeah.
And that's one thing we challenged people to do on our own podcast was, again, as I brought it up for a reason, when Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel were fucking destroying... Am I allowed to say the F word?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
I did. Yeah.
Okay. When they were destroying all of these slasher movies that I liked, for one example, I was like, I see value here. I see what we have as some sort of commentary on the sort of slash and burn morality that are made by people who are making movies about teenagers, saying teenagers are doing all these things that we weren't allowed to do as we were kids, and so they die.
Right.
And there's a certain righteous anger at that, and also a certain hilarity that there's this sort of cartoonishly cut and dry morality still trying to be applied to a generation that it doesn't really apply to anymore.
Yeah.
I'm asking people to tell me what they're getting out of Transformers, and I don't mean I'm entertained. I don't mean it's okay dumb entertainment.
Right.
I'm not saying, oh, it's chaotic and that keeps my attention. I mean, what are we getting out of it beyond that? And there doesn't have to be anything. But if there is something, if there is a reason this is connecting with audiences other than it's loud, I want to know it so that I can better myself. And at least, I don't have to agree with it, but maybe I can take into consideration, maybe I'm missing something.
Well, maybe you're not. Maybe they're just not for you. Like you said, there's certain action movies that work for you and certain action movies that don't. Sure. Like I hated Xander Cage, and Dan Murrell said he really enjoyed it, and I was like, this is ridiculous.
I thought, well, yeah, it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous the way that the Fast and Furious movies were ridiculous.
See,
in which
that's a construct. It's a different construct.
Yeah, it's just a little bra.
Yeah.
Like that's all it is. It's just heightened.
Right.
It's not punishing in its badassness. It's not just like, look at how badass we are. I'm like, okay, I get it. Sorry, Michael. Like, I'm sorry.
But this may be where my military training like comes into play to a degree because I served for 8 years. And so with this whole idea in all the Transformers movies, always the world is about to end every single second that it's on screen, right? And so for me, I take the intensity and I just go, okay, I understand this. And it makes sense to me. Loving Armageddon, loving Bad Boys, loving The Rock, like everything's fast-paced and going all the time. There are occasional down moments in Bad Boys, especially with Tia Leone in an apartment, those kinds of things. But the humor is always heightened and played around with. So it's a style that I like. I don't like all his stuff. I didn't like The Island, didn't like Bad Boys 2. So there are things, and obviously Transformers, the second one, Dark of the Moon, I push back against those.
Second one was Revenge of the Fallen.
Oh, Revenge of the Fallen. Sorry.
Someone's already tweeting about it. So.
Yeah, right. But motherfucker.
Well, you bring that up, actually. I think that's interesting. And I think that's one of the things that, if there is something that I think Transformers is tapping into, I think it is part of that element. I think there was this period in the 90s in which we were still having military conflicts, but they weren't there wasn't this reality where we were constantly at war.
Right, wasn't
people were
numb.
constantly losing people, nor were the military conflicts we were a part of something that directly affected civilian life in America. To a lot of Americans, whether we're sympathetic or not, it's a little academic because we're not from that part of the world where we're sending troops.
Right.
After 9/11, that changed.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were very hyper aware of the military's significance, why we have a military, why they're important. Maybe we don't agree with everything that they're doing over there, but there's a reason they're there.
Yeah.
And we certainly know a lot of people in our lives who are not only part of the military. I came from a very military family. My father was a Marine. My brother was a Marine. My grandfather was a Marine. They told me not to go. It's like, it's not for you. I'm like, okay, fair enough. So
I agree. I agree.
That's not my mentality.
Especially the Marines. Yeah.
It's not my mentality.
You question everything.
But a lot of people just knew people who were soldiers in one capacity or another, and it only makes sense that beyond the immediate knee jerk, we got to make movies that key into our anxieties about 9/11. Going beyond that, and we're still in this today. There's a lot of movies about the soldier experience that are very celebratory of the soldier's experience. Some of them feel more propagandistic than others.
Right.
I think Transformers is definitely keying into that a lot. I think they're keying into that constant intensity, that sort of moment where, oh God, we're under attack all the time. And it's very celebratory of the military. But this goes to everything, even to more quote unquote respectable films like Lone Survivor or The Hurt Locker or American Sniper, where it's basically just all of these people are in the military are people, and we respect them, and they do all of these wonderful things for us, and sometimes very troubling things, and we have to confront that. War, regardless of whether or not you feel a particular conflict is justified, is never really a good thing.
Yeah.
Except in the Transformers, when it's celebrated as, look how badass this is. Isn't this cool all the time?
Right.
Our enemies aren't people. They're just giant monsters that are trying to kill us all, even though they have personalities and rationales for everything. Now they're giant monsters. We're just going to kill them all. I don't know.
No, but the militarization I think that argument would have more weight with me if they were constantly upping the guns. Like if they were like showcasing this stuff, like, look at this new badass thing we found. That is where I would find issue with it. But I think what they're doing is just, they're just, he loves the military. He's had deals with the army. That's why they let him use the stuff that they use. They love him to pieces. Yeah. That's why they let him use all the stuff that he's allowed to use on films more so than any other director.
Right.
And so he's cultivated that relationship with them, and it shows on the screen. And for
me, like I said, it doesn't bother me. I enjoy the crazy bang up, blow up kind of stuff. But I hear your point about turning your brain off. So that's something. It's something I need to revisit in terms of a phrase, right? Because for me, I walk in there like Perry was sitting next to me, going insane about the film. Like she just hated it so much. It gave her a headache. The storylines made no sense to her. But me, I was just like, this is the dumbest and most insane shit I've ever seen, and I'm having a great time. And so you ask, what is the entertainment behind? I don't know that there is. For me, it's just more like it feels macho, and so there's still a piece of me that likes seeing like these kind of macho films, and I get into them, and it explodes. So, but I don't like walk out of the theater and want to punch somebody. I just walk out of the theater and I'm just like, this was fun. You know?
Well, and granted, there is something to be said for catering to some sort of innate sense of self or a sense of gender identity. And once you get down that rabbit hole, you have to ask yourself why so many of them have to be about the macho experience.
This is true.
That we definitely need more than that.
Right.
And again, some of my favorite movies are the so-called badass cinema of the 80s, but I think there's a line there. I think you look at some, like two films that kind of fit in the badass mold in the 1980s, these sort of celebratory, macho, violent films. There's Commando.
Yes.
Which is a lot of fun. Dumb as a bag of hammers.
Yeah.
There's nothing to it, really, other than look at how awesome Arnold Schwarzenegger is.
Right.
He's killing everyone who's our enemy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Enjoying it.
And enjoying it.
Yeah.
And then you have something that fits in the exact same genre. It's sci-fi, but it's the same basic genre. You look at something like RoboCop, which is a spectacularly entertaining, well-crafted action movie about a hero cop who just kills anyone who doesn't fit the moral standard of the society. And yet it's about so much more than that.
Yes,
They take that opportunity to do a actually very salient commentary about how jaded our society has become, about how corporations are sacrificing our identity. The entire film is about a loss of identity and bringing it back, and sense of self-worth that we are losing in an increasingly cluttered society that's shouting us down and telling us to just be part of the system.
Yeah.
You can do both. Now, Transformers doesn't have to do both. Absolutely not. What frustrates me is the huge canvas that they have, the huge audience that they have, the huge budget that they have, the enormous amount of carte blanche that Michael Bay has, and how little he's doing with it. Like, you look at something like, even like Star Wars, which, you know, I like Star Wars a lot. I'm not the Star Wars nerd that, say, Christian is.
Right.
Where I love everything about it. There's a lot of things I don't like about it. And I feel like in some regards, a lot of the newer Star Wars that we're getting is kind of keeping the lights on in a way. You know, it's recycling elements of it, keeping it fresh for a modern audience, but not really changing anything significant. But there are twinges of real quality there and actual insight. And you look at something like the way that The Force Awakens, you know, it says like, oh yeah, you know, we defeated the bad guys, and then like 20 years later, our kids are completely divorced from the reason we fought them in the first place, and now they're all fascists,
right?
And I'm like, oh, that's surprisingly salient. Holy cow! Like, they actually had something to do with that, and all they really had to do was tell another space opera adventure, and they managed to throw something in that was actually relevant, and I think that counts.
And these are great points, William. I mean, like, I think that absolutely makes sense, but I also think Star Wars is a canvas that you can do that with. I don't know if you can do that with. I think you can, with a different director, make a social commentary with Transformers, with the humans,
for
but
intense social commentary. I just wanted to have something on its mind,
right? And it's a great point you make, because last night I rewatched RoboCop for the first time in like years. It was just randomly on, and I was like, I haven't seen it forever. It might come up in the Schmodown. I'm going to watch it again. So, next thing you know, I was up till 1:15 in the morning watching it, and I was about to go to bed. And so it still holds up, still powerful. And you're right, the social commentary it makes, it's so obvious now as I'm older, whereas when I was in my 20s watching it, it wasn't quite as obvious to me. And so so when you see this about Transformers, it's certainly possible to do that within the world, and we'll see if other directors come in and have a shot at it.
Travis Knight's going to do Bumblebee. Travis Knight directed Kubo and the Two Strings.
Right.
He was the president of Laika. He has a good sensibility for fantasy storytelling that is a lot more pulled back. There's this philosophy I have about Transformers, which is, okay, you like them the way they are now, fine. What if and you say like, oh, I don't expect them to be good. I expect them to be macho and fun and crazy.
Right.
What if they were good? Would that ruin it for you?
No, not at all.
That's my thing. Like, what if they were just as coherent and silly and broad as the Fast and Furious movies?
Right.
Wouldn't that be kind of better?
Well, I don't reject the first one in favor of the other ones, though. And the first one is universally accepted as good. You say it's okay, or
I wouldn't
you
say
don't mind
good,
it.
But like,
a lot of people say it's good.
I also know about universally accepted, but like, it's fine. It's fine. It's a dumb movie. If they were all that quality, I would not be complaining that much about the Transformers.
There we go.
Movies.
Right. So that's why I say if someone else comes in and does a job that like it's like the DCU, right? Patty Jenkins came in, knocked Wonder Woman out of the park, just completely destroyed, in my opinion, Bat vs Superman and Suicide Squad.
Yes.
And so people are going to this in mass. So there may be something to your argument that there's a better way to do Transformers, and I guarantee you we'll still go, and then the people who didn't hate it might like it.
And here's the difference when you're talking about Patty Jenkins and even David Ayer and Zack Snyder. All of them are working within a universe that someone else is very carefully curated.
True.
And this is one of the reasons why Phil Lord and Chris Miller leave Star Wars.
Yeah.
That's honestly comes as no surprise. I'm surprised it happened as late as it did,
Mm-hmm.
because no matter how many cool directors Disney and Lucasfilm are hiring for Star Wars, again, they're working within a house style.
Yeah.
Their job is not to screw it up.
It's very clear
Their job
now.
is not to do anything super creative.
Right.
You are not George Lucas making the first Star Wars, where you had a singular vision and we stayed out of your way and we reaped the benefits. You are a franchise filmmaker now. Star Wars is the institution. But the difference with that is that Michael Bay is the institution of Transformers.
He is.
He is. No one else has ever made a live-action Transformers movie. Right. We don't know what a live-action Transformers movie that wasn't directed and creatively curated specifically by Michael Bay even looks like.
Yeah.
We don't even remember what the Transformers look like anymore. They are big, confusing, difficult to perform monsters. You can't really have that connection to them. There were characters. The original cartoon is not particularly good.
No, it isn't.
But it had more character than this. One of my favorite characters from the 80s was actually Starscream, because you have this megalomaniacal supervillain Megatron in the cartoons, and then his second in command is constantly trying to betray him
really
to the
is.
extent that if Megatron stubs his toe, Starscream just yells out to all the Decepticons, "Megatron has fallen! I am now your leader!" And you're just like, oh my god.
Right.
And in the new movies, for the first movie, I was kind of thinking maybe we go there. One of my favorite things about the Transformers movies is that in the first film, Megatron has been frozen on ice for like thousands of years.
Yes.
Or at least 100, like a long time. And Starscream has been leading the Decepticons to find Megatron this entire time. They finally de-thaw Megatron, and he says two things. One, "I am Megatron," which is exactly what I'm going to do if I ever get out of a coma.
Sounds
Just
good.
yell out my name, "I am Bibbs!" But the second thing he says is, "You have failed me again, Starscream." I'm like, he got you out of the... Dude! You have all these potential for character, and we're just denying them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really, really frustrating. And I guess my point is this. If you find the cacophony of Michael Bay's Transformers entertaining, again, fine.
Yeah.
Why does it have to be a cacophony? Why
It
can't it be
doesn't.
clear? Why can't there be character? Why can't there be... Why can't it be as good as Under Siege 2 Dark Territory? That's a low bar for me. I just want a villain as good as Eric Bogosian and like someone to like outrun an exploding train like 2 feet behind them. That's what I want.
If we ever bring back the top 10 show, I want to do top 10. No way you would have thought these people would have been villains in films. And Bogosian absolutely is in the top 10. Yeah, he's great in that movie.
He's so good.
He's no business. He takes what Paul Reiser did in Aliens and he goes to the next level with it. That kind of a performance.
He's hilarious in that
He
film.
really
Like
is.
he really brings it.
No, but I'm not one of these people that says only Michael Bay can do the Transformers. I'm happy any director wants to come in because they're not doing well with the merchandising, and I have a few.
Are they not?
I have a few friends who are connected to Hasbro who tell me this like kind of hush
Kind of
hush.
plateaued, yeah.
Yeah, that it's that the movies have not pushed the brand in a positive way, and I'm sure it's done internationally, maybe internationally, but certainly not domestically selling T-shirts or toys
I
or
haven't
anything
been
like that.
keeping up with it. I remember when the first Michael Bay Transformers movie came out, and they had new Transformers that looked like Transformers
it was
in the movie.
great.
And I was like, okay, cool. And then I found out that they couldn't transform.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's the purpose of the toy.
It says it in the title.
If they can't transform, I don't want one.
It's just a robot.
I don't need that at that point. I can get a robot anywhere. I want a transformer.
Exactly.
Go right. You'll send me straight back to GoBots at this rate.
Or Voltron. Ugh.
Hey, the new Voltron's awesome. Voltron,
I know, I
Legendary
have to
Defender on
give it a
Netflix
shot.
is really, really, really well done.
I know,
And that's
Dennis
actually a
says
good
that.
example, actually.
Okay.
If you want to see like what I think Transformers could be like in
Yeah.
terms of having humor, drama, and character, and all that cool action you're talking about, go to Netflix. Watch the reboot of Voltron that's on right now. It has a very Avatar: The Last Airbender vibe. The show, not the movie.
Right.
It's well made, well characterized, exciting, hilarious. It's great.
Okay.
And then I just watch these Transformers movies, and I'm just like, you didn't need Michael Bay to do this. Like, Michael Bay is, maybe he's not a great filmmaker in that he makes a lot of artistic statements, but he's a significant filmmaker.
He is.
He is an auteur.
Yes, absolutely.
And when I say auteur, not everyone understands what that means. Auteur isn't necessarily a compliment.
Right.
It is a quantitative statement. You watch a Michael Bay movie, you don't think it's anyone else's film. And that goes for everyone from Michael Bay to Martin Scorsese, to back to Ed Wood. It doesn't have to be good.
Sure.
They just unmistakably Michael Bay.
Right.
And I see Michael Bay fighting this franchise. He spent a tenth of his life or more. Actually, he spent like 10 years of his life making Transformers movies with one brief stop to make Pain and Gain. And he refused to do more Transformers movies until he did Pain and Gain.
Right.
And you see a lot of his Transformers. Again, you look at 3. 3 has so much Coen Brothers in it. You can tell he wants to make a Coen Brothers. All that stuff at the office with the color coding and that whole weird bit where Bumblebee tickles John Malkovich for a while. Like, he is so bored with Transformers. He wants to do other stuff. And I want to let him.
Yeah.
I want other people to get a chance to make these movies because maybe they'll be even better.
Yeah, and he did 13 hours. And so he's
13 hours again,
I liked.
I don't necessarily agree with all of its messaging, but it's a
political
well-made movie.
Absolutely.
That is a solidly produced siege picture.
Yeah.
That's I would argue that's his best film.
Oh, you could make a case for that.
I think there's a case to be made that is his best, most coherent, most meaningful, regardless of whether or not you agree with everything he's saying. That's his best movie.
Well, I think that's what's so fascinating to me about Michael Bay, because I lean towards more liberal ideologies and thought processes and stances on political issues, but yet I love the shit out of the conservative nature of Michael Bay's films. I don't know why. Armageddon is one of my absolute favorite films, and that is a conservative wet dream, that whole film. But and 13 Hours is very bent towards, blaming Benghazi on the Democrats and on Obama. Bureaucracy.
Yeah.
And so it was there, but I didn't mind it because the film was constructed so well.
There's a legitimate
American
argument
Sniper too.
And again, I think it's a legitimate argument to be made. Most of my favorite war movies tend to be about the experience on the ground.
Yes.
It's not about the big story, which history will write and will decide eventually who was right and who was wrong. Hopefully accurately so. Not always the case.
No.
But my favorite war stories are the stories about people who are just in the trenches, trying to get by.
Yeah.
The politics are unimportant because we're here now. We're trying to survive and take care of each other. So, like, my favorite war movies are stuff like Cross of Iron or or Black Hawk Down.
Nice reference.
Or I thought David Ayer's Fury was brilliant.
Fury was fantastic.
People did not talk about that movie.
No
enough.
shit.
That movie is, there's all of these characters you see in movies that are enduring the post-traumatic stress of war. And so many war films are, even if they mean well, are relatively sanitized. Yeah. Like, the opening bit of Saving Private Ryan is fantastic, but then the rest of it is kind of a straightforward Men on a Mission John Wayne movie.
Thank you.
And it's a good one, but regardless, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
And then you watch Fury, and it's just like, I get why you come back from war and are changed.
Yep.
That's what happened to my grandfather. No. Like, it's on my mother's side, actually, but like, he was a flamethrower in World War II, and that will change you.
Yeah.
So that movie gets that in a way that a lot of the other big, epic, sweeping war films just can't even touch.
I absolutely agree with you, which is why I was upset that they cut Ayer's Suicide Squad the way they did. I would like to have seen his version of Suicide Squad untouched once and for all, because End of Watch is fucking fantastic.
It's a great movie.
Yep, and Fury is just as damn good. And so
even his bad movies, interesting stuff like Sabotage.
Yeah, Sabotage.
There's some cool stuff in that movie. It's a messy film, but there's some good bits in it.
I would argue it's the best post-Governor Schwarzenegger film that he's done yet.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, the zombie film is good too. I liked the zombie film.
I thought tonally it was a little too down all the time. I just got a little monotonous after a bit. But there's good stuff in there, and he gives a good performance.
He does.
I rather liked. I thought The Last Stand was kind of a fun,
that
weird,
was fun with
kooky
Knoxville,
movie.
yeah.
There's fun to be had with that flick.
But Sabotage was like fucking nuts.
There's cool stuff in there, and honestly, he's not the most interesting character.
No.
You've got Olivia Williams, who's knocking out of the park.
Yeah.
You have Muriel Enos, who is constantly exploding. In that movie, she is just like an explosion trapped in a film, desperately saying, "Can I have a better movie? Because I am amazing. I am tucked in the trunk of a car in the middle of a speeding car chase with the trunk open, sniping at people from the back. Why don't I have my own franchise? This is sad.
It's true.
She's so cool in that film.
It's like watching Mel Gibson in Expendables. I was like, you are above this shit. You're so much better than everybody in this fucking movie, including Stallone. You have no business being in this movie, but he elevates the fucking movie. I think Meryl does the same thing with Sabotage. You're absolutely right. Because that's why she's lost on that stupid show on ABC. That's a stupid fucking show.
I haven't seen it. I loved her in The Killing.
Yeah, I watched all 4 seasons because of her.
But there was this time when like Maria Enos was totally trapped in good or okay movies as the wife.
Yep.
What was that Josh Brolin movie about organized crime in Los Angeles?
Oh, God,
Gangster Squad.
Which
was not a terrible movie, but it's not a particularly good one. And it focuses on everyone but her, and she's like the best actor.
Yeah.
Man. Like even Sean Penn is just giving this one of his more cartoonish Sean Penn performances.
I don't know what he's doing. It's like watching Mobsters again. Watching that film was like watching Mobsters again. It should have been way better than it actually was.
I know, it's such a damn shame because the organized crime history of Los Angeles is actually really interesting.
It's fascinating as fuck.
And we've only kind of had like 1 or 2 good movies about it. It's like LA Confidential and others.
And maybe that's
maybe. I mean, yeah, you want to say Chinatown, maybe kind of, but it's a different. It's a different aspect. You know, it's
more of an insular story too.
Yeah, no, I agree.
All right, so one last thing I want to talk about because we're running out of time. So the Schmodown. Let's get into it because Christian says I can't post these things on the Schmodown page unless I talk about the Schmodown. So I'm going to talk about the Schmodown. What is your feeling about it now at this stage? You as a singles competitor, has the Whitney one, has that been up yet or no?
By the time this is, hold on, are we going to edit this?
Yeah, I'll edit this.
Okay, when is this going live?
Tomorrow.
So no.
Yeah.
That has not been announced yet because that's not going to be announced until
so I'll cut that out.
Our whole thing.
All right, so go ahead.
All right, so give me the question again.
Okay, so all right, so I want to ask you, now that you, what is your feeling about the Schmodown as a singles competitor? You came in like gangbusters. Everyone thought you were going to be the head, and I did too. You were killing it. You
recruited me into the horse person.
Yeah, exactly. Right, the horse person. Stop saying horse person. We're horsemen.
Well, until we recruit some women. I'm trying to be inclusive here.
That's fair. Don't sabotage me. So what I'm saying is so you came in, you gangbusters, and then you took that hit on JTE. Which was a rough loss, and now did you? And then you won again, or
I won again. I beat Dewberry quite handily, TKO,
right.
And then it was a close call with me and Christian.
Yeah,
and that was frustrating because one of the problems with the Schmodown is that it's sometimes difficult to tell, and I'm sympathetic to this.
Yes,
what is a hard question and what is an easy question?
True,
and certainly an easy question to one person might be a really hard question to someone else. But I think that there are certain levels which aren't always taken into consideration, in which the level of detail about a movie, even if it's a popular movie. If it's super Chris, is it Skalicki?
Yeah, Skalicki.
Skalicki. I always mispronounce his name. I apologize.
No, it's all right.
He likes to do a lot of questions about geography. Have you noticed?
Yeah.
That's not always the thing you pay attention to in a movie, and I feel like that's a harder question than which James Bond movie has pussy galore in it.
Right.
Which I feel like, isn't that kind of the most famous James Bond movie, or at least in the top 3?
Right.
It's kind of so there's a matter of perception there, and that can be frustrating when it doesn't go your way. When it goes your way, it's fantastic.
Yeah, of course.
And a lot of that is just luck of the draw.
Yep.
I totally get that. I made some offhanded jests about it's rigged, and I actually regret doing that. It was intended to be in good humor and me being a heel, and some people took it way too seriously and actually started lobbing accusations. If I thought the show was in any way rigged, I would quit immediately.
Well, I think this is what's important for you to say that too, William, is because people still believe this bullshit that it's rigged. None of us would risk our credibility, our status, mine being less so than yours, but we wouldn't risk it. If it was a rigged situation.
Yeah. No,
all these people participating and being rigged, that's really ridiculous.
It's never been rigged to my knowledge, and if I found out it was rigged, I would leave immediately.
Everybody
and I would.
would.
Tell everybody.
Yeah, everybody would.
There's no point in it.
Yeah.
It's a trivia show.
Yeah.
It's just a game show, and it's just a game.
Right. But people take this
sometimes
shit
Monopoly
seriously.
board goes your way. Sometimes it doesn't.
That's right.
Sometimes you roll the wrong thing in Trivial Pursuit and I got sports. This is gonna suck.
Son of a bitch. Scores and soundtracks. Son of a bitch.
So, you know what?
And I hear you.
The funny thing is everyone made a big deal about scores and soundtracks.
Yeah, they did.
No scores and soundtrack. It's not my expertise.
Right. But you
but
acknowledge
actually, I got a couple of scores and soundtracks questions in my first match. I nailed them.
You did.
I got my scores and soundtracks questions right at the free
for all. Yep.
All right, I got some bad questions, and they were all kind of in a row. My percentage of accurately answered questions is higher than I think anyone else who's done as many matches as me by a lot, except for Merle.
I don't doubt
think Merle is still number one, and with good cause.
Yeah,
Merle is a monster.
He really is.
So I stand by all this. I know my stuff, but I don't know everything. And sometimes it's just real simple as I try to watch everything, but then the question was up who was it? Just a simple one.
Yeah.
who was the guy in Once Upon a Time in America? I'm like, oh crap, I never saw that. It's just that simple. I never saw
It shocked
Once Upon
me
a Time in
that you
America.
hadn't seen that
I
one,
know,
man.
it's weird, right?
It's
I'm a
always
big
shocking.
Sergio Leone fan.
Yeah.
And it's this thing, actually. It's a sort of philosophy that I've had where I played a lot of catch-up throughout my life.
Yeah.
And I tried to watch all the AFI Top 100 movies.
Yes.
And, all that. And that's the reason those lists exist. It's not, some people say, like, top 10 lists exist to sort of reaffirm your pre-existing bias. Like, oh, good, that movie I liked is on that top 10. I feel good about myself.
Right.
They exist to recommend movies to you.
Exactly.
So if there's something in there you don't know about or something on there that's higher than a thing you like, check it out.
Yeah.
That's why it's there. It's to expand your awareness. So, but there's always something. I'm not going to tell you what they are, but there are certain very famous movies I haven't seen.
Right.
There's always a few.
We all have them.
And honestly, there's been a part of me, and I might have to rethink this, there's a part of me that enjoyed not having seen everything.
Right.
Because there's always something else. I haven't completely caught up. I haven't seen... I'll give you a name of a movie I have seen.
Sure.
Just to throw it out there. But, like, if I'd never seen Rear Window... like Rear Window is arguably Hitchcock's best movie. Also, why isn't Hitchcock a whole category on the wheel? By the way?
Yeah, that's a fair point.
But I've seen pretty much every Hitchcock movie.
Yeah.
But if I hadn't seen Rear Window, I'm saving it for when I'm sick someday, and I'm just on the couch, huddled in a blanket, and want to see something new and old and cool. You know what I mean? Like new and old.
That's happened to me 3 weeks ago. I'd never seen Rear Window at all. And
Really?
And I'd seen all the Hitchcock movies, 39 Steps.
Isn't it brilliant?
Lifeboat. I'd seen them all. But for some reason, Rear Window I was like holding out for. And
Yeah.
then the day hit me perfectly. And I sat on a Saturday afternoon for 2 hours and enjoyed the shit out of that movie.
That movie is basically flawless. Like every
Yeah.
single thing in that movie is meticulously placed.
Yes.
And it works dramatically. It's suspenseful. It's funny. It's scary. And it's just like you can just analyze any single part of it. And it's absolutely brilliant. There's not a lot of movies that are so particularly put together that work at that well. And yeah, it's funny to me. A lot of people say, oh, Vertigo is Hitchcock's best. Vertigo is an interesting film, but I think it's only interesting if you know every other one of Hitchcock's movies. And I feel like it can't be the best for that reason.
Right.
You have to do too much homework.
That's a fair point.
To appreciate
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
It's brilliant, but you have to know your stuff.
Yeah, I was very angry. I was very angry when they said it was number one over Kane. I almost wanted to shoot everybody to
Like
death.
there are other movies, if you put over Kane, I'd be like, I'll concede your argument.
Sure.
Like if they had put, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example that wouldn't tick me off. Tokyo Story.
Tokyo Story's fantastic.
Fantastic, super important, deserves more credit,
Sure.
I think, from non-cinephiles.
It's a heartbreaking film to watch.
Oh, it's painful and it's
Yeah.
beautiful. And honestly, I hadn't even seen it until one of those Sight and Sound polls. And I'm like,
Oh.
oh, well, shit, I got to go see this movie. And I
Right.
did, and I'm really, really glad I did.
Right.
There are other movies that I think it's okay to put over Kane, even though I actually would argue that Citizen Kane is the best movie.
Yes, me too. Seven
least for now.
Samurai I would accept over
I would accept
Kane.
that.
I
That's
would
totally
accept,
fine. There is Seven Samurai. There are certain movies, and honestly, not many,
Yeah.
that are so good and so influential, and sometimes very subtly influential, that without them, all of film history collapses. Now, some
Very
of them are
great
super
points.
obvious. Some of them are super obvious, like The Jazz Singer, because of this whole sound thing.
Right.
It hadn't been done before. Sadly, Birth of a Nation, long-form storytelling, even
Yes.
though it's the most racist thing ever, that didn't exist before
My
that.
journey to the moon.
Yeah.
We wouldn't even have cinema without that.
But
Yeah.
cinema, visual effects,
Yeah,
all of this.
all of it.
But Seven Samurai is one of them, and partially because of its cinematic language. That was like the first film, at least that I'm aware of,
Yeah.
that intercut between slow motion and regular motion in order to create suspense.
Yes.
That's a common cinematic trope now. And Kurosawa, if he didn't invent it, he at least popularized
Mm-hmm.
it. And that's where it exists. But also, it just kind of created the action genre as we know. The men on a mission genre did not exist.
Right.
It's incredible. And then you also have stuff like Psycho, and you have stuff like Jaws and Star Wars, and it's harder to tell this closer to the contemporary day.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
like in 20 years, we might look back at something now, and we'll be like, oh yeah, it took a couple of years for it to take hold, but after Moonlight, everything was different. Yeah, maybe.
It may be.
You don't know.
Yeah.
History matters. History is kind of the only film critic that does matter.
Right.
A lot of the things, like we're having a huge debate about Transformers right now. 20 years from now, maybe no one cares.
Maybe.
That's my thing. There's so many, we think, oh, it's popular. Therefore, it must be meaningful and valuable and good. No.
Right.
In fact, there's a lot of incredibly popular motion picture franchises that people do not talk about anymore. They're gone. Francis the Talking Mule is my go-to because it's a funny name.
Right.
It's easy to interject into a conversation. That was one of the biggest motion picture franchises of the 1950s. I don't even think it's on DVD right
Nope.
now. Like, no one talks about
They
it.
don't even show it on TCM.
You know that comic strip Blondie?
Yeah, Blondie.
With Dagwood
Of course.
and sandwiches and everything. Do you know that there were over 20 live-action movies made from that?
Well, fuck, if we're going down the road, you might as well throw in Little Abner. There was a bunch of Little Abner movies made off that
Andy
comic
Hardy,
strip. Andy
Mr.
Hardy.
Moto.
Sure.
Like, they're all of these things,
Mr.
and
Moto.
for various reasons, some better than others, they're gone.
Yeah.
They were super popular, and they're dead.
Yeah.
Because popularity can be fleeting.
Yeah.
Significance, meaning, or at the very least something to latch onto, that will last. And I worry about the Transformers movies because that's a lot of time and effort to make something that I don't think is going to matter in the long run.
That you got a right to that opinion.
Yeah.
And my
Darn right I do.
My only my only thing I would say is that I don't think these films would have been made to the level that they were made if it wasn't for Michael Bay.
That's
and
probably
Steven
true.
Spielberg. Like, as both of them combining to do it, there's no way we have them at this level with this kind of detail, this kind of attention given to the special effects and the amazing work that's done throughout each of the movies to make them feel realistic and lifelike in the areas that they put them in the environments they put them in.
But I think, honestly, it's that particularness that kind of makes them culturally... I don't want to use the word useless because that sounds really extreme, but I don't really see them making a lot of impact because I feel like every time someone tries to capitalize on this, we're going to take this Michael Bay approach to Transformers, we're going to put it on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, makes a little money, and then it's gone.
Oh, God, it was terrible.
The sequel was actually not half bad. The sequel, for kids who grew up with the cartoon version, with Bebop and Rocksteady, if 8-year-old me kind of liked that movie.
I like
'Cause it's
Bebop and
coherent
Rocksteady,
silly
don't get me
and
wrong.
fun, and it's okay. It didn't hurt me the way the Transformers hurt me. And here's the difference. And I know someone's like, oh, well, he liked that, but he didn't like the Transformers movies.
Exactly.
This is exactly my point. We're allowed to set our standards.
Exactly.
If you're allowed to say you like the Transformers movies, I'm allowed to say I liked one of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies.
You absolutely
Actually, I
are.
like two because the original movie actually holds up pretty good.
The 1980s one.
The 1989,
Absolutely.
1990 live action one's actually
Absolutely.
pretty good. And it's another one where it's got all that stuff you like about the comics and the cartoon.
Right.
But it grounds it a little bit. And ultimately, it's actually like a really emotional story about that family.
Yeah.
You can make it good. And honestly, making it good doesn't necessarily cost any more than making it bad.
Right.
So we should be aiming for that, right? Like, I know, like, some people say, like, oh,
Stop
kids,
tricking me, William.
Kids like everything. Kids will like anything you put in front of them.
That's not true.
That's not true. But
Yeah.
even if that is true, then why not show them something good?
Yeah. True.
Why not?
Yeah.
Try it. Enjoy. Give it a chance.
All right. I think that's a perfect note
right.
to end on. William, man, thanks so much for taking the time, dude.
Thank you.
This
Thank
was
you.
a fun conversation.
It was a fun conversation. We got to have you on Cancel Too Soon sometime.
Absolutely.
When you pick out a show.
Yeah.
I've given you the opportunity multiple times. It just never comes
Are
together.
there enough? Are there enough left? Are there any left?
There are literally hundreds.
Oh, really?
I
One
can send
season
you,
once.
I can send you the list if you want. Like that we have.
Please.
People send us suggestions, and there's new ones we find out about every day.
Okay.
Like literally every day, people tweet us like, "You ever hear this?" I'm like, "Oh crap, no, we didn't."
Yeah.
Gotta put that on the list. That
I was
sounds awesome.
heartbroken when you'd already done Prophet. That is
Prophet
my
was one of the
absolute
first ones
favorite.
we wanted to do, and certainly we did that.
I turned McCoog onto that one. He'd never seen it.
Oh, yeah, and that was
loved
another
it.
one that I think without Prophet, I don't think we would have learned the lessons we needed to get stuff like Mad Men and Breaking Bad off the ground as successfully as they did. I think it's because Prophet tried it and failed, and people learned the right lessons from it. This stuff worked, this stuff didn't.
Exactly.
That we got the golden age of television. I think it's not the only thing that led us there, but
Right.
I think it's important.
Absolutely.
I think it's significant.
That's why I feel bad for Pazdar, because Pazdar did fantastic work.
Pazdar is a really good actor.
Yes, he is.
Who just never... Heroes briefly.
Yeah.
Kind of broke out in Heroes for a bit, and then Heroes fizzled in second season.
Right, and that was more Hayden and Milo's show than it was his, but it was nice to see him come back and do some great work.
He's such a good performer.
Yeah, you know he's married to Natalie Maines, right?
Yeah, I actually met
is
them
so
once.
insane. Really?
I was not in this
awesome.
capacity. I've interviewed a lot of people. I've
Yeah.
never interviewed either of those people. I was working at a Barnes and Noble like 10 years ago, and Adrian Pazdar and Natalie Maines come in, and I, who know nothing about music to speak of in terms of like the pop music at all,
Right,
like I'm
right.
kind of like just casually aware, I geek out because Prophet's in the room. And I never, because people will come, it's a bookstore. Famous people come in once in a while and you try not to say anything,
Right.
but everyone gets one once in a while.
Right.
And so I walk up to Adrian Pastor like, hey, I never do this, but I love doing Prophet. That was one of my favorite shows.
What'd he say?
And he was like, oh, that's so nice to hear. I'm not going to do his awesome
Okay.
voice. Like, oh, that's nice to hear.
Yeah.
I can't do it. But he was like, oh, that's nice to hear. That meant a lot to me, and it was a good show, and I'm glad people found an audience. And Natalie Maines is there just sort of smiling, being polite. And then I walk away and I tell my friends, dude, that was Adrian Pazdar. And they're like, is that the guy who was with the Dixie chick? And I'm like, that was the Dixie chick?
That's brilliant. That's an awesome LA story, man.
It is. It was cute.
So perfect.
So he was nice. He was nice.
Yeah, that's cool, man. All right, so William, tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, so you can find my writing at Crave Online. You can find my podcasts on iTunes. Cancel Too Soon, I think, is also on Stitcher. Cool. Cancel Too Soon, we review TV series lasted one season or less. The B Movies podcast, we review movies. We talk about movie news. We have some celebrity guests on. We've taken a bit of a break from that lately, but not too long ago, we had Joel Hodgson on to talk about Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Nice.
For about an hour. He was fantastic. Cool. We're going to do more of that over the summer. And you can see my weekly TV reviews on What the Flick. We're reviewing Twin Peaks, and we did Sense8, we did Doctor Who. We're figuring out what we're going to do over the summer as well. Cool. And I'm on Twitter at William Viviani.
There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, follow him, read his stuff. Trust me, you will become a better movie watcher, movie viewer, and you'll analyze shit better. Trust me.
You're a nice guy, Roka.
Oh, I'm serious.
I will be your bro for life.
Thank you.
Yes.
Horseman forever.
Horseman forever and ever and ever, always, every time. Always and forever. Horseman.
All right, stop. You're laying it on too thick. Stop it. All right. I mean, what can I tell you? It's William Viviani, man. The Beast. The Outlaw and the Beast have maybe some things we may still need to work out, but as people, we're cool with each other as people. But the Outlaw and the Beast may have some things to work out. So it's the way it goes. Strong personalities are strong personalities. Not much you can do about it. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. This was a lot of fun. I know it's a long episode, so for those of you who endured it all the way to the end, thanks so much. I just, like I said, when Christian handed me this podcast, I said I wanted no limits and I wanted to be able to talk whatever I want to talk about. And he's like, all right, do what you want to do. It's your podcast. So if this is too long for you guys, I apologize. If it isn't too long for you guys, thank you. Some people have been trying to make me keep it to an hour. Like, oh, well, my class says you got to keep it to an hour. My teacher says you got to. Listen, I am who I am. I think personalities sell stuff. If you guys enjoy my personality, enjoy my interview style, then you're sticking around. That's kind of how I look at it, and so that's how I work. And I've always worked that way. The Top 10 show was that way too. Like we'd go into hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes sometimes, and that's just how we built our base. Maybe I'll do a 1 hour show of the Outlaw Nation podcast in the future. Maybe I'll force myself to stay to an hour. We'll see. But I just think you guys enjoy spending time with the people I interview, which is why I take time with them and ask them questions. It's like my style is conversational. My style is not like, let me ask you a bunch of questions. I swear I never walk into these interviews with a set bunch of questions. Never. I have an idea. I have ideas in my head of what I want to ask them. And if it comes up, great. But I like to let the conversation flow naturally because I want you guys to feel like you're sitting in the room with us just watching the conversation, like you're sitting there having a drink or having a smoke or, just hanging out, checking your phone while you're listening to us talk. That's the kind of vibe that I want to have with my interviews. And I hope you guys got that with Rachel and with William Viviani. So thanks so much for listening this week. I really appreciate it. Always love your patronage. Always love your support, your words, everything that's out there that you guys are doing to support the show. I really appreciate. I hope I'm getting, everyone's saying I'm getting better. So I hope I'm getting better. I hope I started at a good place so that I'm just getting better every week. Some people were saying they have some issues with some of the technical quality of the audio or whatever. So I'm still learning as I go along. So I'm a novice to this editing thing. I'm doing the best I can. If it irritates you, if it's off, leave me some notes. Let me know. Steve on the Cinephiles, he was just like, I like listening to you, but I feel like you're not quite there in terms of the decibel level of the audio. You're not quite 100% in the same kind of place you need to be. So I'm working on that and learning about that more and more. So if it is an issue for you guys, audio-wise, like the volume was too high or the levels are too messed up, then let me know because then I can see that it's a serious problem that I need to take a look at and figure out because I don't want to lose you guys if it's irritating to listen to me or if it's difficult for you guys. If it's work for you all to listen to me, I don't want to do that. So just let me know in the comments and whatever, okay? And then suggestions. I think one of the great suggestions I got this week and I wasn't able to implement it this week is that post a thing every week where you're asking people to send you questions, and then maybe answer some questions at the end of the show. That's brilliant. I want to make the podcast more interactive, so that's a smart suggestion. I can't remember who suggested it, but just know, if you're out there listening, I'm hearing you, and I'm going to implement that starting next week. And I've got a couple of people. I'm going to start maybe doing some segments. I got a couple of people who are interested in kind of messing around and doing some segments with the show, who are friends of mine and executive friends of mine, and so we're going to see what I'll come up with. But yeah, things are in motion in that way to make the show a little more fleshed out, a little more fun, and hopefully that will be in starting next week. So we'll see. All right, thanks everybody again for listening to the Outlaw Nation podcast. I am John Roca, aka the Outlaw. Listen, it's not just my show that's on this channel, the SK Plus podcast channel. Don't forget, go to Don't Be a Beardo, go to the Wangers show, go to the Schmodown Rundown, go to After Schmodown show. There's so many shows on here. Leave them comments, download their episodes, listen to their episodes, talk to them about their episodes, do whatever you can, subscribe to the show, subscribe to the channel rather, and give us a lot of love and support. We love doing these shows, we love doing these podcasts for you guys, and it's a lot of work to just kind of figure out what to do, set up time, record stuff. It's a lot of work, and so I just want to let you all know that we do it because we love it, and that we want to hear from you all that you love it as well, that you enjoy it, or ways that we can improve. So hold on. So it's always a good thing. There we go. That's a voiceover actor clearing his throat. There you go. So there, awesome. All right, thanks again, guys. You guys can follow me at The Roca Says on Twitter and on Instagram. That's TheRochassays. Follow me on this, or listen and download and subscribe to the Cinephiles, Cine-Files on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, it's all there. And also we have a Patreon. So if you want to go and help us and support the show and you love the Cinephiles, go to patreon.com/Cinephiles and donate. And we've got some great prizes coming up, some great shout outs, some great stuff coming down the pike for the Cinephiles. So it'd be awesome to get you guys support, because the shows aren't easy to do, or the shows aren't cheap to do. So it helps us out to keep doing the show. And of course, you can watch me every Friday on Collider Movie Talk, and occasionally, recently, other days as well, which is always at 10 a.m. in the morning over at Collider. And I think my Spider-Man Homecoming non-spoiler review dropped this morning, if you're listening to this today on Thursday, over at Collider Video with Perry Nemiroff, Mark Ellis, and me. We just kind of talk about the film for a few minutes, and we don't spoil anything. We just talk about the general overall feelings about the film, and suggest it to you if it's worth going to see it or not. All right, there you go. All right, thanks guys so much again, and we will talk to you all next week. And always remember, read the books, do the work, focus on what you need to focus on, keep believing in yourself, and fight. Always fight for what you need. Fight for what you need to make you happy. Fight for what you need to survive in the world. Fight for what you need to bring you peace. That's the most important thing. Because you're not going anywhere without some kind of peace. And even when you get there, you ain't going to be happy if you ain't got peace. So do the research, do the explore. No matter what age you are, there's things out there for you to explore and understand and figure out and find a connection to. And don't be ashamed. Don't be ashamed about it. Shame is what destroys you. Embarrassment is what destroys you. Fear is what destroys you. None of that is going to bring you peace. So go find your peace. Who cares who's laughing at you or making fun of you or saying crap about you behind your back? Listen, I've dealt with that recently. I found out a friend was saying a lot of shit about me behind my back. She was commenting about me. She was telling other people of issues that she had with me. And I was like, why don't you just come to me and talk to me straight up? You're supposed to be a friend. So, people will do that to you. You just got to ignore it, not give them power, and just let them twist in the wind, because that's more about them and not about you. Their insecurities, their issues, their self-esteem issues, their need for attention, that's all them. It's got nothing to do with you. Just focus on you. Do what's right. Do what you feel is right in your heart. And in the end, that's how you win. And that's how you survive this world. All right? All right. We'll talk to you all next week on the Outlaw Nation podcast here on the SK Plus podcast channel.